Morning, everybody. Hey, Wade, thanks for helping out, switching the attendees over to panelists. Most of the folks who are in the, who are listed as attendees have submitted public comment. A lot of them sent in emails, but they may want to speak. So I think we can just make them panelists and unmute them when the time's right. Morning, Bill. Can you hear me?
Johnny, I'm not hearing any audio from the room.
I'm not either.
Let me go see if I can find Michael.
Okay, thanks.
Hey Johnny, it's Cheryl. I'm moving people over for you.
Okay, thanks, Cheryl. Rich just stepped over to find Mike. We can't get any audio from the Plant Hillsborough room, so I think we're trying to sort that out before we get started. Cheryl, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you fine.
Okay.
Test, test. Can you hear me now?
Mike, I can hear you, but you're kind of faint.
Okay, that's because I'm at the end of the room and I got a mask on.
Can we do an audio check with the committee members who are in the room?
Some person with us or is he remote?
Oh, look at that cover picture.
Yeah, she is.
Good morning, this is Terrence. I'm remote. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Morning, Terrence.
That's my John right
Right?
there. Look at good result.
Was that from this year's fancy?
Christine, how are you? Do you see you?
I don't believe me.
I know. The whole pack of tutus.
All right, Bill, I think we've got everything sorted out and organized. If you're ready to get the meeting started.
Still a little bit hard to hear here in the room.
Okay, I'll turn that up.
Yeah.
All right, I will talk as loud as I can. So we have everything sorted out, I believe, that we need. I see a number of members of the public who've logged on to leave a comment. So my suggestion, Bill, is that when we get to that part of the meeting, I've also received a number of emails and I've been asked to read them into the record. So if it's all right with you, maybe I can read the emails aloud first, and then we can turn it over to any folks who are in the room or on the line who want to speak in person. Does that sound okay?
I'm still having just a little trouble hearing Mr. Dr. Long. Can you hear him okay?
Honey, we cannot understand you here in the
Say it
room.
again, Johnny? Johnny?
Yeah, I can hear you.
That's better.
No, that's much better.
We had a volume thing.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you want to go through that again?
Okay, yeah, sure. Sorry about that. So I was saying that when we get to the public comment portion of the meeting, I've received a number of emails from folks who've asked me to read their comments into the record. My suggestion would be that maybe I can go first and read those aloud, and then we can turn it over to folks who are logged on or calling in who want to leave a comment. I already see that there are maybe 5 or more names that are recognized who've asked to speak this morning.
Okay. That's fine with me. If you'll be the timekeeper on those public comments, I'd appreciate it.
Sure will.
If the staff is ready and the committee is ready, we'll call the meeting to order. Everybody ready? Johnny, you ready?
Yes.
Johnny, can you hit start meeting? Public meeting, whatever.
It says recordings in progress.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call this January 2022 meeting of the Citizens Advisory Committee to order. The first order of business is introductions. I'd like to do self-introductions here in the room, and then we'll move to those online. Let's start over here on the left side and go around the room and introduce yourself and who you represent.
Hi,
everyone. Alexis Slovak was appointed by Councilman Bittfelder.
Joshua Frank, appointed by Oakland County School Board.
Jonathan Knudsen, under 30C.
Miaza Morrison, appointed by Commissioner Collins.
Good morning, happy new year. I'm Rick Fernandez. I'm the Hispanic representative at large.
Morning, I'm Bill Roberts. I was appointed by the Aviation Authority.
Good morning, I'm Christina Costa, and I'm appointed by City Councilman Joseph Citro.
Good morning. I'm Don Skelton. I was appointed by Port Tampa.
Good morning, I'm Christina Bosworth, and I was appointed by Commissioner Mary Hall Smith.
Very good. And we have some committee members online. If you would like to introduce yourselves and do the same, I'd appreciate it.
Good morning, Happy New Year. This is Carolyn Brown representing Commissioner Myers.
Right.
Terrence Pratt, African American at large representative.
All right.
Good morning, this is Stephen Hollenkamp, appointed by Plant City.
Morning, Karen Gaman, small business owner.
Morning. Good.
Good morning, Rick Richmond, appointed by the Planning Commission.
Morning. Is that everyone?
Jeff Lucas, good morning, appointed by the Tampa Hillsborough Expressway Authority.
Good morning, Jeff. Good to have you. Thank you. Carolyn, did you identify yourself? I think you did.
Yes, I'm here. Good morning.
Very good. Anyone else online? I think that.
Mr. Chair, this is Gail Reese, the recording secretary. I do need to let everybody know that an in-person quorum has been met, and some members are participating virtually because of medical reasons and the local declaration of emergency.
Thank you, Gail. I appreciate those of you in the room who were able to attend in person and help us with that quorum. The next item on our agenda is public comment. Dr. Wong, I think you wanted to read some things into the record, and then we'll recognize those who have called in or phoned in. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So I'm going to read these in no particular order. The first one is from Nicole Perry, which says, hello, as a resident of the Tampa Heights community, I wish to express my opposition to further interstate barrier wall intrusion along the eastern border of Tampa Heights. I'm also opposed to demolition of historic properties in Tampa Heights and elsewhere, including the property located at 1902 North Lamar Ave in Tampa Heights. Please support Tampa Heights in its effort to protect its lands, history, health, property values, and quiet enjoyment of its residents. My family lives at a beautiful home located on the very eastern side of Tampa Heights. We purchased our home from FDOT and rehabbed it. It sits across from the community garden. We hope it to be our forever home as we love this neighborhood. The garden, the greenway, walkability, etc. That said, there are some issues we already experience because of the highway. The dust and air pollution from the highway quite literally stains our house. I shudder to think of what that does as our children breathe that in while playing outside. I worry greatly about the impacts of further expansion in the long term once it's completed, but also in the short term from the construction. Tampa does not need wider highways. Its traffic is sometimes non-existent even at peak rush hour. We do not need to induce demand of cars into the city. We should be protecting our residents first and prioritizing real transit options and walk bikeability. Please do your part to help put our city in the right direction and not negatively impact the citizens of Tampa for something that won't fix future problems. All right, that was the first one. The next that I received just this morning is from Lena Young Green. Actually, I'm going to hold off on that because I see that Lena is on the chat and she may want to speak. So I'll move forward. The next one is from Vivian Salaga. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing that. Dear CAC members, It has come to my attention that agenda item 8B regarding I-275 barrier wall intrusion along the eastern border of Tampa Heights and the proposed demolition of the historic property at 1902 North Lamar Avenue will be discussed at your meeting on January 5th, 2022. I'm aware that documents relating to this discussion have been distributed to all of you earlier today via email by Dr. Wong. Please take a close, hard look at these documents as they paint a compelling picture as to why the proposed barrier wall should be opposed and design revisited. I wish to express my opposition to further interstate barrier wall intrusion along the eastern border of Tampa Heights. There already is a significant segment of barrier wall from Flora, Nebraska southward to Palm Avenue and beyond, supporting the overpass of the highway. It would appear that additional intrusion into the neighborhood is unnecessary and completely disruptive to the quality of the neighborhood residents' domiciles. The proposed path of the barrier wall appears to require the removal of the historic property located at 1902 North Lamar Ave, a property which, prior to its ownership by DOT, was a contributing designated historic property to the Tampa Heights Historic District. The demolition of other historic properties in the southern portion of the district in the name of progress have ravaged the quality of the neighborhood's historic structures. Adding even one more demolition of a completely sound building, were it not for lack of maintenance by DOT, is a slap in the face of all of us who work so hard to maintain and support Tampa's historic neighborhoods. Please support Tampa Heights in its effort to protect its lands, history, health, property values, and quiet enjoyment of its residents by supporting another long look at the DOT proposals and helping us to carve a path that furthers the sustainability of this historic neighborhood. All right, the third I received is from Tony Crowe. I also see that he's joining us on the call this morning, but he has not been made a panelist. So I will read that, and if he wants to leave a comment live, we can also make that happen. He's requesting that we submit this comment. To 1, not expand highway concrete any additional feet, declare a moratorium on the DTI OSI, I'm assuming that means operational and strategic improvements project, so as to allow for a full vetting of FDOT's plans. 2, do not demolish historic Lamar. Stabilize and secure the building so as to allow opportunities for repurposing and restoration to active community service. 3, do commit to equity and community leadership by funding alternative transportation solutions, specifically the Boulevard Tampa concept study, and using alternative funds to fund sidewalks. He says that he's going to submit this comment from a more personal perspective based on economic data and the effect that certain government decisions have on community and mental health. All right, so here goes. In November of 2021, FDOT blindsided the historic neighborhood of Tampa Heights with 2 issues related to interstate expansion. These 2 issues are listed in the above list, numbers 1 and 2. The third item on that list above is the solution with the most positive economic impact for the city of Tampa, as well as for Hillsborough County property tax. A visual of the Boulevard Tampa project can be found at, he includes a Facebook link, and also at the website boulevardtampa.com. Issue number 2, destroying contributing structures. On contributing structures, I'm not an economist by any means, but I do understand the value of Tampa's first suburb, Tampa Heights, and the value of cultural identity. When we talk about contributing structures, we are really talking about an emotional response and sense of identity for the humans that exist in neighborhoods to care about their neighborhood and neighbors. These are factors that contribute to quality of life. If there's anything we can learn in 2022, it's that people are more important than things. And let's look at the policies of FDOT. Since the 1960s, the policies have revolved around moving things like cars, not people. There are many things we can do for the future to create value for the residents and a sense of pride for the neighborhood they live in. I find it ironic that FDOT really started talking about tearing down this property recently when the building was being vandalized with graffiti. However, what FDOT has been doing for years is nothing short of vandalism. Everything is perspective. However, there is a truth that we're either celebrating life or celebrating things, celebrating unity and community or making decisions to tear them apart. We, as citizens of Tampa Heights, have a vision of building community by utilizing historic Lamar as a community center for the arts, music, or a meditation center for healing and connectivity. I submit this comment to strongly consider historic Lamar be safe from destruction. The community will find a way to fix the roof of the building and come up with a solution with FDOT to keep this structure in the community and make it useful, beneficial, and beautiful. And then issue number 1, no further expansion of the interstate. Why? Well, let's look at the history. In the mid-1940s, Firestone, Standard Oil, and American Automobile Lobby paid off TICO to remove the streetcar system that connected the neighborhoods to the core of downtown Tampa. Many areas of downtown have yet to recover from this. Look at Franklin Street, the first paved street in Tampa, which had north and south streetcar tracks and perfect mobility. Since the streetcar tracks were removed and then subsequently the interstate was constructed, the energy of community was severed. What we now have is still empty, dilapidated buildings along Franklin Street, like Crest, Moss Brothers, where now a nice parking lot sits. Carriage Repository Building, the Tampa Wagon Wheel Company, and so many others. Chair and committee, I think up on my 3-minute time limit. There are a few paragraphs left, but I will enter this into the comment for you all to view at a later time.
Yes, I'd like to have that information available for the committee. Thank you, John.
Sorry, Bill, I didn't hear what you said.
I said yes. If you'd enter that and make it available to the committee, I would appreciate it.
Okay. All right.
You have a third or fourth?
The next I received is from Helen Ann Travis, which says, hello, everyone. As a resident of the Tampa Heights community, I wish to express my opposition to further interstate barrier wall intrusion along the eastern border of Tampa Heights. I'm also opposed to demolition of historic properties in Tampa Heights and elsewhere, including the property located at 1902 North Lamar Ave in Tampa Heights. Please support Tampa Heights in its effort to protect its land, property values, despite the enjoyment of its residents. Okay, I think that those are all of the emails that we submitted. There are others, but I see that Matt Suarez is on the line. We received one from him.
I know you're desperate to talk to me.
Let's see. We also received one from Lena Young Green, who is on the call, and Mauricio Rosas. So Mauricio asked me to load up a YouTube video for him, which I have, and if it's okay, I'll play that now.
Okay, go ahead.
It's actually almost 5 minutes. I'm going to play the first 3 minutes.
We're not getting the audio here. We're still not getting the audio here in the room.
I'm sorry, everyone. I'm not quite sure how to troubleshoot that because I don't typically play the videos. Mauricio, since you're on the line, would you mind giving your public comment now while I try to fix this?
Let's do that.
You're self-muted if you're trying to speak.
Mauricio Rosas. Yes, the video is a resident. Her name is Marie. She actually lives on the side of Columbus on the east side. And her concerns are, you know, this was her vacation home. I'm sorry, her retirement home. And a lot of people in that neighborhood where she lives are retirees. They've spent their entire lives there. And she says that widening the highway is absolutely crazy. How do we move forward on something without destroying? She said this is not a sustainable option. She understands that there's a need for growth, but there's better ways of doing it, using rail, using bus systems. And okay, I'm a little distracted by what's going on in there. The bottom line is that she opposes any more widening. She feels that her neighborhood is being destroyed, and she would like this to stop. My own comment is that I do not support demolishing the structure on Lamar. Not at all. I would like to look at it. I've not seen it myself in person to see if the structure is viable or not viable. But if it is viable, I completely oppose having that structure removed. That's the end of my comment.
All right, thank you. We're trying to get the video working. Long's been successful at it.
Yeah, sorry about that, Mauricio. Again, since I wasn't able to get the audio to come through, I will email that out to all the committee members.
Okay. Other public comment?
Okay, Bill, those are all the emails that I received. And again, I see that there are a number of folks who are sitting in the chat room who I believe want to make a comment. So I suppose we can turn it over to them now.
Okay, I'm not seeing that information, so if you will call on them in order, I'd appreciate it.
Lena Young Green, I received an email from you. Would you prefer to leave your comment loud, or do you want me to read your email? And Lena, you're self-muted.
Good morning.
There we go. Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, I would go ahead and make my comment now, if you don't mind. Good morning, committee members. Thank you for this opportunity to speak with you again. Feels like we are doing what we've done before, but here we are again. As we've said before, Tampa Heights is most impacted by these interstates. This started many years ago. When I first moved to Tampa in the early 1980s, I was told about the fact that Malfunction Junction was a problem. And ever since then, there's been efforts to fix this problem, which some engineers explain is a design issue. And here we are one more time talking about more safety and talking about the safety issue and this same area that needs to be done again. And every time something is done, a few years later, just a little while after, we have another issue about the same area. We definitely oppose interstate. The interstate's coming directly through our urban core that has done what it's done historically throughout the nation, impacted communities that are of color. So I'm totally opposed to this project, opposed to the moving of the walls more into Tampa Heights as more than it did before, and also continuing to impact our historic district, which we, the residents, initiated ourselves and worked so hard in order to try to protect our way of life, our social activity with each other, and mitigate the health impacts to the residents of this area. Please consider our opposition to these latest actions by DOT. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your comments.
Okay, Chair, I see that Nicole Perry has their hand up, and then after that, Clive Hunn, and I received a couple more messages in the chat, so I'm going to work with them to see if we can get them unmuted. So Nicole Perry.
Morning. Nicole, if you could state your name and your address, I would appreciate it for the record. If you're muted.
Hi. Hi, this is Perry. My family lives at 602 East Francis Avenue and across from the community garden. I raised my hand earlier when my letter was being read. So I just There's a couple things I wanted to add. First, the news of the barrier wall being moved was, this was unknown to our family up until very recently, I think within the last month or so. And we have, been in talks with FDOT about different things since purchasing the house lot from them. And, it was just the news that the barrier was actually getting moved was, a complete shock. But I just want to say that, add to the letter, which thank you for reading, but basically our home was completely rehabbed. We finished May of 2020. And so the staining of our home has happened in the past year. We have dust and debris. Our railings are stained constantly. We constantly have to wipe them down from the pollution of the highway. So it's just unfathomable that it would even be thought that widening a highway in this day and age, when so many people are for mass transit, would be a good idea. And just the fact that, this is coming up again to subject the citizens of our city to that, at what expense. So obviously we are completely opposed to any highway widening and any barrier walls moving. And I also think it would be a shame to tear down any more historic buildings, as ours, like I said, was rehabbed. It sat vacant for many years. So, if it had been rehabbed, 8 years prior to when we had done it, I'm sure it would have been a lot more simple of a process, but we had to go through a lot to get it to where it is. And I'm sure the Lamar building will have to go through a lot, but I think it's worth saving. So I appreciate your time, and please help Tampa Heights to not be further destroyed. Thank you. Tim.
Before the committee. Johnny, who's next?
Okay, up next we have Clive Hunn, and then after that, Doug Jessup. Sorry.
Thanks. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, if you'd give us your name and address for the record, that would be great.
Sure. This is Clive Hahn. I'm at 2824 North Elmore Ave, directly adjacent to the southeastern border of 275. And, my wife and I built our house on this vacant lot about 3 years ago, 2018. In October, that's when we bought everything. And we moved here from the Northeast. We moved here from Philadelphia. And one of the attractions to Tampa Heights for us was it reminded us of the urban community we lived in Philadelphia. And so we're obviously very used to heavy traffic living in the city of Philly. And, we did not think that something like this would happen here, just because, the population is a lot smaller in Tampa Bay. But I know it's growing, and I've heard from some previous callers and emails that have been read that there are different ways to improve infrastructure. And but I do support improving it, but not to the degree of what FDOT is potentially trying to do. And I think Nicole said it on the previous call before me, that I am opposed to, and my family's opposed to, the additional intrusion of the southeastern wall barrier, because our daughter was born here 2 years ago, and definitely concerned about the air pollution and debris currently, and what the short-term and long-term will look like. But we had no idea that any sort of additional construction will be done on the wall that's adjacent to our house. I mean, it's already very, very close. Mr. Fernandez can attest to that because he's a neighbor of mine, but nothing in terms of specifics of the project were known to us, and exact specs, timeline, duration, what kind of construction equipment will be, coming in, and what time of day. I mean, we moved here because we wanted to, put our forever home here with, our young daughter and growing, and our 2 dogs. And, the concern for us is, land stress in our house, because it really directly affects us, the proximity of this proposed project, property value threat, and just quality of life. I mean, we totally support the maintaining of our urban community here. We've made this our home for the past 3 years, and we're excited to move forward with it. But this is definitely very shocking to my wife and I, and we are very opposed to any continued destruction of the Tampa Heights community. Thanks for your time.
All right. Well, thank you for your comments. Welcome to the community.
All right, thank you, Clive. Next, we have Doug Jessup, and then following that, Matt Suarez.
Can you hear me? Am I unmuted?
Yes, we can hear you. If you state your name and address for the record, thank you.
Okay, my name is Doug Jessup. I live at 6007 North Sewanee Avenue in Tampa. I'm here to speak in opposition to the additional expansion of the interstates, continuing the theme you've heard. The first point I'd like to make is that if you look at the economic history of interstates in urban areas, there's not a single case where building or expanding urban interstates has produced positive economic outcomes. I mean, there's literally not one case globally where this has helped. The construction of an interstate creates an economic dead zone. It destroys property values. It destroys economic activity. And so the argument that we're getting from FDOT that this is necessary as a matter of, maintaining or improving a vital economy, that's just nonsense. Furthermore, there are no instances where interstate expansion schemes of this sort have produced better traffic flow, lower commuting times, lower crash rates, et cetera. I mean, literally, there is no instance that FDOT can point to that would be positive in this case. So out of the gate, there's just no reason to support this project. Worse than that, however, I think is the mendacity of FDOT on this project and many other projects of a similar sort. If you recall, if you've been here long enough, you may remember that Malfunction Junction was reformed back in 2006, roughly 4 to 6 or 7, when the famous flyover was built. And at the time, that was sold as the definitive solution to the problems of Malfunction Junction. And hundreds of millions of dollars were dumped into that project. And if you view that as a way of reducing crashes and improving traffic flow and lowering travel times, you have to admit that every nickel of that expenditure was wasted. It was a complete and utter disaster, at least insofar as traffic is concerned. It made a lot of money for contractors, but that's not the issue. Likewise, if you look at the economic forecasting that's been promoted by FDOT, claiming that this is going to A, produce better travel times, and B, have a positive economic impact, what you notice is they never show you the actual empirical basis for that judgment. They rely on software, which is proprietary and whose inner workings we are not allowed to look at. And miraculously, this black box software kicks out something that says this is going to be a good idea. But of course, this is the same kind of thing that happened, that led to the justification of the infamous 2006-2007 makeover of Malfunction Junction. We're just going down the same road again and again. So there's literally no reason to take seriously anything that FDOT claims as far as a justification for this interstate expansion. And I mean, on that basis alone, it should simply be sidelined. And finally, I would just like to make the case once again to bring up the vile racist history of I-275. I-275 is put where it is. The alignment was chosen by a bunch of despicable bigots, white supremacists, whose guiding principle was to take federal money designed for interstates for transportation, and to use that to really stick it to non-white communities. The alignment of I-275 is chosen with surgical precision to go through what once were vibrant non-white communities. Of course, it could have gone through, say, across north over by where Bears Avenue is and taken property from white citrus farmers, but that was never on the agenda. Instead, it was part of a campaign in the 1950s and 1960s to use federal highway money to support a racist agenda. There's just no other way of characterizing it. Now, you might say, oh, well, gee, that was then and we're sorry about it, but we have to live with the interstate that we have. That harm is done. Too bad. We're sorry about it. But the fact of the matter is the harm continues. I mean, the damages that were done to those neighborhoods remain in distress in many ways, precisely because I-275 is where it is. And no amount of so-called upgrading, building of more barrier walls or whatever, is going to suddenly make it okay. So the rational approach at this point, from the standpoint of economics, from the standpoint of equity, from the standpoint of justice, is simply stop dumping money into I-275. Allow it to degrade, allow it to crumble. And when it's no longer drivable, rip it out and implement the Boulevard project. That, as far as I'm concerned, is the only rational way forward. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Jessup, for your comments.
All right, thank you. Up next, we have Matt Suarez, and then I don't see anyone else with their hand raised. Dana Lazarus, perhaps. So maybe Matt Suarez and then Dana.
Matt, you're up. Your eyes, go ahead.
Matt, you are muted.
406 West Steel Street, Unit 508, Tampa, Florida 33606. Honorable members of the Hillsborough County Transportation Planning Organization Citizens Advisory Committee. During this meeting, I would like to request that the TPO's CAC file and approve a motion to accomplish the following. Stop the Florida Department of Transportation from destroying historic property in Tampa Heights, including stopping the planned demolition of the Tampa Heights Historic District contributing structure at 1902 North Lamar Avenue. Stop the FDOT's intent to physically expand the interstate via the planned I-275 barrier wall movement in Tampa Heights. This was a movement that was first introduced and made aware, or members of Tampa Heights were made aware of in November of 2021. Declare a more temporary moratorium on FDOT's downtown Tampa interchange operational and safety improvements projects so as to allow for full vetting of the project, including the impact of barrier wall movement. With these items said, I would like to focus on the referenced demolition of the structure that contributes to the Tampa Heights Historic District at 1902 North Lamar Avenue, Tampa, Florida 33602. This relates to the presentation that is there on the screen. I've requested TPO staff to provide this to CAC members with visual. It represents a visual timeline that has been assembled related to the structure found at the address. The timeline chronicles the structure at 1902 North Lamar Avenue from the 1990s to the present day, using images gathered from Google Street View, Florida Memory, State Library and Archives of Florida, the National Park Service, Facebook, and investigative records. This information is being provided because it shows that from 2007 to 2015, the structure was not in the derelict and blighted state it exists in today. And if you want to just continue on with the slides as I'm reading here. Today it exists in this state because the Florida Department of Transportation has possessed it for the last 6 years and imposed such a sentence upon it. If we look at the images, we see that in 2007, someone took it upon themselves to invest in the contributing structure found at this address and make it better than what it was in the 1990s. Why? Because they seem to care about the quality of the built environment. They seem to care about the structure being one that contributed to a nationally recognized historic district. They seem to care about the historic value and integrity of their community. As one who petitions the Florida Department of Transportation regularly on matters regarding concerns of the agency's delinquent acts in the community and its forms of unjust behavior, the 3 items noted at the opening of my public comment are just some of the numerous reasons why the TPO CAC must file and approve such a motion during this present meeting. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for your comments and your presentation. Chair.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes.
Make a quick comment.
Quick comment for Mr. Fernandez.
Thank you, Chair. And Matt, if you're still on the line, I see your face. The timeline, I think it's just important that the folks here in the room and virtually understand the timeline. I don't think Matt really pegged it. The DOT bought the property in 2015. So while they were advancing through the timeline, it would be really important, and we can go back to it again later, to note the deterioration of the property from just prior to 2015 through 2021. I don't even know if the 2021 picture was actually shown with all the graffiti. I don't remember seeing.
Yes, if I could identify, it was, and then also there is a heading on the slide associated with 2015 that notes when DOT purchased the property in the presentation. So you're welcome to refer to the presentation as far as where you see that titling is in a red box with white font. That's the moment of purchase by DOT, which is right there. If you go back one, go back two, one more, there it is right there, July 2015.
I think the presentation,
right there.
the presentation was made available to the committee. Does that conclude your public comment remarks?
It should have.
Thank you. John, who's next?
All right, thank you. Received an email from Dana Lazarus. I'm going to read it aloud. After I read Dana's email, up next will be Brian Seal, followed by Tony Crowe. Okay, this is from Dana. Hey there, you guys. I hope this email finds you well. One, FDOT should not demolish or move the historical multifamily structure at 1902 North Lamar Ave, and instead should provide a route to renovate and sell or lease the property for 50 to 99 years. I'm aware that this is not directly a TPO matter, but I think it's important for the CAC and TPO to be made aware that FDOT has acquired historical properties into its right-of-way, especially around the highway, and is demolishing them against the wishes of the local community. I hope that the committee and board would feel empowered to take a stance on what FDOT does with our transportation dollars and make a motion to pass the word on to FDOT and a resolution to support saving this specific building. I'd also like the CAC to resolve not to allow FDOT to expand the concrete structure of the highway. FDOT has not been transparent about its specific widening plans and design. FDOT has used the words footprint and right-of-way interchangeably, and I don't believe most of those committee and board members who voted on funding the downtown interchange were provided a clear picture of what the specific design was going to be. More than that, the local community, specifically those who live right up against the highway, will be greatly impacted by the sound and particulate matter pollution, oppose any widening of the concrete structure. Those community members must be listened to. And finally, I would like to point to the racial equity resolution of the CAC and TPO, which passed in August 2019. That resolution acknowledges the disproportionate and intentional destruction of BIPOC communities, especially in Tampa Heights, VM, Ybor, and Ybor City. The Equity and Non-Discrimination Plan also commits the TPO to deprioritizing car-centric infrastructure funding. Now is the time for the TPO, CAC staff and board to walk the talk and halt any investment in what is essentially highway widening and advocate for funding actual solutions to mobility issues like transportation demand management strategies, the boulevard concept, and drastically increasing multimodal transportation options. Thank you very much. Okay, so that was from Dana Lazarus. And up next is Brian Seal, followed by Tony Crowe.
Good morning, committee members. Thank you for having me. My name is Brian Seal. I am the neighborhood president of the Tampa Heights Civic Association. And I think the prior speakers have addressed very well some of the concerns with the wall expansion, with the potential demolition of 1902 North Lamar, the historic structure there, and generally FDOT's approach to interstate widening projects. I'd like to just state that it's a pattern of FDOT communication, and what our ask would be for the CAC and the TPO board members would be to encourage a change in FDOT's communication style with the community and the way they go about making decisions. As the Civic Association president, I can state that we were not made aware or consulted or brought into the conversation prior to some of these decisions being made, which have a significant impact on our neighborhood. And it seems every few years we have to stomp our feet and make a lot of noise, go to the media in order to get attention from FDOT, and then they go into panic mode. It's just really not a healthy and productive way of working with the community for a better outcome for all. So I would encourage you as board members to take a position that encourages a permanent change in FDOT's relationship and actions with the community. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Seal. Thank you for your service to our community and your comments to the committee. Johnny, do you have another respondent?
Up next, we have Tony Crowe, and I think that he may be the last one, unless I get another message while he's chatting. This will be the last public comment.
All right.
Hey guys, I'm not sure if you can hear me. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, Tony, we can hear you. If you state your name and address for the record, I appreciate it.
Oh yeah, my name is Anthony Kroll at 3907 North Dartmouth Avenue in the north west quadrant of Tampa Heights neighborhood, 33603. I submitted a comment that Johnny had read almost all the way through, but I'm just going to add something to that. Just for the public record and just to kind of let the community know sort of, you know, how some of these things work. A lot of times when we're in, you know, government meetings or we're in city council meetings where we're talking with FDOT, we think that change and innovative ideas and all of these things are very hard to implement. They're just a decision. So it's not hard to implement bringing Tom Brady to Tampa and win a bunch of Super Bowls. You know, it's not hard to implement Jeff Vinnick building an entire water street in like 3 years. You know, like infrastructure and ideas and building is not difficult. And change in our communities is not difficult. And if we take, you know, just kind of ideas and the way our communities work and the way our government works, and it's just about, you know, how are we thinking about the people and how are we, you know, looking at ourselves and saying, all right, what's the legacy of Tampa and how can we really change this and how can we push back on some of these terrible ideas that have started in the 1960s? How can we start to, you know, set an example? We're doing that by winning Super Bowls, great, you know, sports. I mean, all eyes on Tampa in the world right now, right? But what we can really start doing is we can look at our city and draw lines on it. If it's a blank canvas, take an eraser, draw new lines with a new pencil. You know, it's really that simple, and we can come to an agreement on that. So, you know, I just, you know, wanted to plant this like seed of forward-thinking energy in the, you know, in the public record to say this stuff isn't that hard. You know, we can do it. So that was it. That and the rest of the stuff is in my email.
Thank you, Mr. Kroll, for your comments. Are there other speakers, Johnny?
Chair, since I wasn't able to troubleshoot Mauricio's video, he's asking if it's okay for him to attempt the audio on his end.
I'm sorry, you say he wants to test the audio on his end?
He wants to play the audio coming in from his computer, if that's all right.
I'm perfectly happy with that if technically we could make it work.
Okay, Mauricio, it's all yours.
I'm seeing it from when it wasn't Seminole Heights to now we have about 8 craft breweries within 2 square miles.
Yeah.
I've seen property values go from nothing to something. I've seen the community come together and being, I think, a foundational member of the community. I know that if it is the case that homes and properties will be impacted, I would ask that they.
I'm going to ask you to terminate the audio. It's not a.
If the problem is the volume of traffic.
I'm sorry, you have to terminate that audio. If you could circulate that video to the committee members. It was not understandable here in the room. I don't know if our committee members online could hear it more clearly. I appreciate the preparation of the video, and I'm anxious for the committee to see it, but I don't want to take the committee's time to play a video we can't understand.
Copy that. I copied the link into the chat box for everyone to watch at their convenience.
Okay. Are there other public comments?
I don't see any. Thank you, Chair.
All right. We'll close the portion of the meeting for public comment. We thank the citizens who have taken the time to come and appear and speak to the committee this morning. The next item on our agenda is our members' interest section, and this is a section where we offer committee members an opportunity to bring up topics that they would like to see in a future agenda, but not take this opportunity to discuss those items particularly. I may start here in the room. Alexis, you have a question?
Yeah. So I'd like to bring up, I think it was in December, there was a couple news stories about the park removing bus benches on Nebraska Avenue as in response to some in the area or something. The last time I heard, CART was planning on putting those seats back, but there was not a definitive schedule on when that was going to happen. So I just wanted to bring that up. One, if we could check in on the status of those benches, and two, if we could have a discussion as to why that was the response to loitering or whatever the crime was, considering people who use those buses need those benches. So.
Okay. I'm happy to do that, and I'll ask the staff to look into it. Sometimes those benches are owned by private companies, and sometimes they're owned by HART, but we need to distinguish which is which.
Okay.
Josh Frank, did you have a member's interest?
Yeah. One of the speakers, I think it was Dana, but during public comment, mentioned a social justice and equity resolution adopted by the CAC at some point in the past year, I believe. Being a new member, and I know there's several other new members, I'm not as familiar with that resolution as maybe I should be. So I'd like to ask that staff maybe circulate that resolution to us again as members, or find a way to, make that more well known to new folks on the CAC.
I think that's an excellent suggestion. I'm sure we can get that distributed to the committee. Are there other members' interest items for those in the room? Rick Fernandez, right now.
Thank you, Chair. Hope everybody can hear me. I'm going to blast it just a little bit because I'm not hearing people very well. First of all, I had the pleasure of chairing our meeting last month, which was a joint meeting with the TAC, the Technical Advisory Committee, I think is the nomenclature. And frankly, I found it a little disconcerting. I mean, COVID is bad enough, and these virtual meetings are a little hard to get your arms around sometimes, but I was just concerned that I was hearing comments from people over the virtual connection on this committee that I've never met and I know absolutely nothing about. It's, and if you're not even seeing their faces on the screen, it's just a disembodied spirit someplace that's offering opinion. And frankly, I've always enjoyed the fact that this committee works very collaboratively, and we're all sitting in a room. We get along pretty well. We disagree a lot, but we get along well. And I think we're losing that. So I'm not sure how we fix that in terms of getting people physically in the room, but I would like to suggest that there be time set aside on the agenda, more than we normally do, for our member introductions, to give each member an opportunity to truly introduce themselves to the committee. It may be 3 minutes, as if they were sitting or standing up there making public comment, but something that begins to put their presence in this room into context for the rest of us. That's number one. Number two, I've asked this of staff previously. I think my first request was made in December. I would like to see a Department of Transportation representative. Their choice could be Mary Lou Godfrey, could be Justin Hall, or some other talent yet to be designated, to come in and talk to us about the projects that we have heard from the community about this morning, the extension of the barrier wall into the eastern border of Tampa Heights and the demolition of 1902 North Lamar. I understand DOT is going to the board next week to make exactly that kind of presentation. They did not come here first. They don't have to. It would have been nice. But since I think this is going to be an ongoing conversation for some period of time, probably would be a good idea to have them come in and chat with us too. So those two things, I would hope we might be able to make some accommodation for. Thank you, Chair.
Good suggestions, Rick. Other members' interest items that committee members who are online would like to bring up. Johnny, if you would recognize them for me.
I see that Sharon Yaman has her hand raised. Sharon?
Sharon, you're recognized.
Sorry.
Good.
I just had one little thing. This is the time to do it. I don't know if anybody is aware. I know you were just saying that a lot of us don't really know each other due to COVID, and I've only been on the board for about half a year. But I have a restaurant, Strand Hill Public, on West Palm Avenue, which is across from the Armature Works parking area. And there's it's on West Palm Avenue, and there's a circle for the, does everybody know where I'm talking about? It's basically West Palm and North Highland feed into it.
Yes.
Well, it's very, very dark, and there are lights there, but none of them are on, ever. And there's also a lighting, like a portable lighting structure right across the street from my restaurant that looks like it's a construction light almost. And I'm just wondering why.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's a fair question. My sense is that that's a question for the City of Tampa, Public Works, and we'll try to get some response to that. Rick, did you have a comment on it?
Yeah, Sharon, I'm very familiar. That's only about a mile from my front door, and I travel Palm all the time. I'm wondering if that particular area of concern and that light in particular might somehow be under the umbrella of Soho Capital or one of their vendors, Adam Harden. I imagine you know of him, or at least of the company. That might be a good place to direct that question.
Okay. Okay.
I can help you make that connect if you don't know him, but.
No, I know exactly who you're speaking of.
Okay, all right, cool, thank you. Happy New Year, by the way.
Happy New Year.
Are there other members' interest from committee members who are online? Johnny?
I see that Hoyt Prindle has his hand raised. Hoyt?
Hoyt, you're recognized.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Just a couple things. One, I know since our last joint meeting, there was another pedestrian death, I believe a couple days before Christmas over on Hillsborough Avenue near the airport, Benjamin Road, hit and run driver. Hillsborough in particular, I would say between, probably east of 275 and in all the way over to the Veterans is a pretty dangerous corridor for pedestrians. I myself go and jog that corridor, part of it from time to time because it's near my neighborhood. And, I understand the speed limit's probably 40 for some of the stretches or 45, but that seems to be where a lot of the speed bike racers and others who rev their engines where you can hear 5 neighborhoods away want to go at night to fly by. So just another reminder that one of our goals, I would think, as this committee is to help promote Vision Zero goals and reduce unnecessary pedestrian deaths. And so it's just something I'd like us to keep in mind on. And maybe at some point, Mr. Chair, the TPO can get us some data on pedestrian deaths or injuries along Hillsborough, because I know that's not the first time that's occurred. It's a fairly frequent road for pedestrian injuries. The second thing, I don't know if it's really within the scope of our committee, but I'll bring it up because I know it's been a subject on Facebook, and it kind of goes with what I was saying previously in terms of the speed racers. There seems to be a regular problem in West Tampa with on MLK and Hillsborough and others with groups of people, especially at night, getting out and driving at unsafe speeds, and I mean, you can hear them because they're that loud, probably going 80 miles an hour. And it might be nice at some point to have a recommendation for some police enforcement in the evenings on some of those stretches. In fact, I think some of those folks are so bold. I posted a video on Facebook. I work downtown, and the top deck of the Iorio garage, which is where the parking for the Lightning is, there were guys out here in the middle of the day doing wheelies and sending smoke all over downtown. You could hear them. I'm on the 35th floor of an office building. So I guess just generally to wrap up, those folks, I understand they want to go out and drive fast, but there are places to do that that are not on parking decks and in the middle of neighborhoods where pedestrians are out walking and bicyclists are out biking. So something to keep in mind for future meetings in terms of maybe making a recommendation on enforcement. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Hoyt. And I would simply add to that, if that's an issue, the importance to the committee, I would welcome a motion in a future meeting to request the TPO inquire from law enforcement as to how those can be better enforced. Are there any other comments from anyone online?
I don't see any other comments virtually. I see Christine has her hand up.
Yeah, we have a comment here in the room. Go ahead.
Yes, this is Christina Bosworth. I think a lot of these comments we're getting are people kind of don't know where to go. I think it'd be helpful at a future meeting to have something presented telling us if you have an issue with a state road, lighting on a state road, lighting on a city street, if you have issues with speeding on a state road versus a county road, who do you contact? I would really be interested in finding information.
I think that's a good suggestion. Christina Costa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to share with our committee members that I was one of about 25 students that participated in the USF Center for Urban Transportation Research class called TBCAT. That was Tampa Bay Citizens Academy on Transportation. I know all of you were invited to participate in that. And all of the students, it was interesting to me that every one of the students who really stayed engaged, about 20, did not express any, these are all volunteer citizens giving up their own time, approximately 30 hours over a 12-week period. And every single, there was not a single student who was invested in that time so that they could advance automobile movement. Every single student expressed and eventually created projects to advance other modes of transportation or make our existing transit modes better. So that was very interesting and illuminating for me, and validation that when we spend our time pushing for better solutions, we are on the right track. These are all individuals that I've known, did not previously know, and I do consider myself fairly plugged in. The second thing I want to say is I want to express thanks for the public comment that we received. And for those of you who did not recognize many of the names of the speakers, I want to tell you these are highly accomplished and award-winning citizens in our community for their leadership and the time and energy that they put forth. So it's great to hear from all citizens, but when you hear from citizens who spend a majority of their time working in our community as volunteers, we all should consider that extra powerful. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Good comment. Thank you, Christine. Any other items under members' interest? Anyone else online indicated an interest to speak?
No, Chair, I'm not seeing any hands raised.
All right, well, we'll close the members' interest portion of the meeting. The next item on our agenda is the approval of the minutes of the December 15th meeting. I'm not sure that those have been circulated. Has anyone in the room seen those minutes yet?
Chair, no, they weren't circulated. I apologize for that. This is the first time I've ever experienced this. We reached out to the clerk's office, who was in charge of taking the meeting minutes for the December joint TAC-CAC meeting. And the most recent update we received was yesterday morning. They said that the minutes had been completed, but we're still going through the proofreading process internally. I don't believe that those minutes were ever delivered to us, so my suggestion would be for us to just take no action today. Obviously, we don't have any minutes to vote on, and then we can approve January's and December's during the February meeting. And again, my apologies on behalf of the clerk's office for that.
Appreciate that, and I understand over the holidays how those may not have been prepared and approved. So we will defer action on the minutes of the December meeting until our next meeting of the committee. The next item on the agenda is the beginning of our action items. We have 3 action items today. The first is the election of officers. Each year, this committee elects new officers to serve, and I'm going to turn that over to Dr. Wong. I think he's going to run this portion of the meeting.
Yes, thank you. Johnny Wong, TPO staff. Welcome to the first CAC meeting of the year, and Happy New Year, everyone. What we do every year in January is recognize the officers that served in their 3 positions, chair, vice chair, and officer at large for the previous year. I hope I'm not alone in saying that they all performed amazingly and did a really stellar job bringing important topics to the committee and making sure that the meetings ran as smoothly as possible. The election of officers, or the term of officers for this committee, only lasts 1 year. So at the beginning of every year in January, we seek new officers if anyone wants to run. And the way that we typically run this process is first by nominating or opening up to the committee nominations for chair, and then voting on the chair, and then we'll open up to nominations for the vice chair, vote on that position, and then end with officer at large. So first, to recognize that the chair for 2021 was Bill Roberts, vice chair was Rick Fernandez, and officer at large was Stephen Hollenkamp. So at this time, I'd like to open it up to all the committee members. You're able to nominate anyone, although we have paid special attention to, or I should say monitor, to ensure that if a committee member is nominated for the position, that they actually want it. So we don't want to vote anyone into a position who's unable to fulfill the duties, because it can be somewhat time intensive. So let's begin by opening it up for nominations for chair. You can nominate yourself, or you can nominate someone else. There's no second required. I'm gonna write down all of the nominees, and then when we wrap that up, we'll put it to a vote.
All right, thank you, Dr. Wong. Rick Fernandez, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. Johnny, thank you for that briefing. It is my privilege, honor, and to have the opportunity to nominate our current chair, Bill Roberts, to continue in that role if, in fact, he still wishes to maintain it. I've enjoyed working with you the last couple of years as your vice chair, and I hope to have the opportunity to do it again for another year.
Well, thank you. I would be willing to accept that nomination for one more term, after which I think my appointment from the Aviation Authority will likely expire. But I thank you for the nomination. I appreciate the confidence you placed in me. Are there other nominations for chair? Anyone online, Johnny?
I'm not seeing any hands raised or nominations in the chat. One last call. Any other nominations for the chair? All right, then, just to be formal, I think we should put it to a vote. And the only nominee is Bill Roberts. So if everyone who agrees that Bill Roberts should remain chair for the duration of 2022, please, Actually, let's do it this way since we're hybrid. Cheryl, would you mind calling the roll and we can have everyone say yay or nay?
Bill Roberts,
Yes.
Rick Fernandez,
Yes.
Carolyn Brown,
Yes.
White Prindle,
Yes.
Christina Bosworth,
Yes.
Miaza Morrison,
Yes.
Stephen Hollenkamp,
Yes.
Alexis Bobak,
Yes.
Christina Costa,
Yes.
Artie Fryer,
Yes.
John Skelton,
Yes.
Jeff Lucas,
Yes.
Jonathan Knudsen,
Yes.
Sharon Gamond,
Yes.
Terrence Trott,
Yes.
Rick Richmond,
Yes.
Joshua Frank.
Yes.
And at this time, I want to make a call. I've been trying to keep up with everybody online. Did I miss anybody who is attending virtually for this roll call vote? Hearing no opposition, the motion passes 17-0.
We have someone raise his hand up.
I see David Bailey raise his hand. Can we make sure that we have him entered onto the attendance sheet, please?
Yes, absolutely. David Bailey, your vote?
Give a thumbs up.
He voted yes. I'm not sure if you can
Okay,
see.
so the nomination for Bill Roberts as chair passes 18-0.
Sweet.
Thank you very much.
Good campaign.
And with appreciation.
It was a tough race, but
Sorry, I didn't want to make everyone uncomfortable by doing a roll call vote for the officers, but since we can't see most of you and we need to make sure we get an accurate attendance, I appreciate you all bearing with us. So second position that we'll be seeking a nomination for is Vice Chair. Rick Fernandez served throughout 2021. And at this time, I'd like to open it up to committee members to nominate either themselves or someone else. So nominations for Vice Chair, please.
Christina Costa is recognized.
Mr. Chairman and committee, I would like to nominate Mr. Fernandez to continue as our vice chair. I have found his leadership both when you're here and also as a substitute chairman to be very effective, and I would like to nominate him as our vice chair.
All right, thank you.
I'll second that.
I'll accept that. Thank you.
Rick indicates he'd be willing to accept the nomination. Other nominations for vice chair. Anyone in the room? Anyone online?
No, it looks like Rick Fernandez will be running unopposed. All right, since Bill, Chair, if it's okay with you, I think we can, we don't need a roll call vote for this since we made sure that everyone is present for your nomination. So I'll turn it over to you for a simple yay or nay.
I'm sorry, did you say you do or do not recommend a roll call vote?
I don't think we need a roll call anymore. I just wanted to make sure that we get a roll call for yours to make sure that we have everyone marked down as either present or absent.
All right, let me ask the committee, does anyone request a roll call vote, or can we accept Rick Fernandez's nomination by acclamation? Anyone requesting a roll call vote? Seeing none, I'll declare Mr. Fernandez as the newly elected vice chair. Thank you very much for your service this year, and I look forward to working with you again.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Johnny. We'll move to the next position.
The last position seeking, or I'm sorry, the last position that is open is for Officer at Large. Stephen Hollenkamp is the rep for Plant City, and he served for the duration of 2021. Again, no seconds needed, and anyone can nominate either themselves or others. So at this time, I'll call for nominations for Officer at Large.
All right, thank you, Johnny. On the nominations in the room, yes.
I'd like to nominate Stephen Hollenkamp.
We have a nomination for Stephen. Stephen, are you willing to continue in the position?
Guys,
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
yes.
All right, thank you. Are there other nominations? Anyone in the room? Anyone online care to make a nomination for the officer at large?
I'm not seeing any nominations online, so it looks like Mr. Holland Camp will also be running unopposed.
All right. Then I will, seeing no further nominations and no opposition, I'll declare that Mr. Hollenkamp is elected unanimously as the officer at large. Stephen, thank you again for willing to accept this duty. All right. That's the first of our action items on our agenda. The next item is the attendance review and the declaration of vacant seats. I believe each of you have received in your packet the summary of attendance for each of our members. Johnny, do you want to also conduct this portion of the meeting?
Yes, I will. Thank you. This is the last item of business that we have to go through at the beginning of each year. The bylaws for the TPO in this committee state that at a minimum, committee member attendance will be reviewed annually. Our policy is that if there are any members on the committee who have been absent or just failed to attend 3 consecutive meetings, we first reach out to them to ensure that they're okay and that they're still able and willing to serve in their role on the committee. If they are not, we declare that a vacancy, and then we seek membership from someone else in the community by doing some public engagement. We actually receive applications to serve on this committee year-round, so we have somewhat of a backlog of folks who are interested. So for the attendance for current members, we have included the attendance sheet as an attachment in your agenda packet. You'll see that there have been some vacancies on this committee throughout the year. You'll see that there were 3 consecutive absences from the Expressway Authority throughout the year. That has been cleared up. We actually have 2 representatives from FIA at the meeting this morning. You also note that there are some vacant seats open, and I'd like to speak to that before we propose an action for the committee. We've known for some time that there are some seats that are open, or vacant, and need to be filled. We have intentionally not brought forth nominees for those seats because we're rethinking the way that the committee membership is structured for the CAC. We want to, our goal for the CAC is to ensure that citizens have a voice. And there's really 2 elements to that. The first is ensuring that we have geographic representation. We want to make sure that every community has the ability to voice its concerns. And the second is to ensure demographic representation. We want to make it very easy for folks from different communities to participate, whether those communities are racial minorities, those with disabilities. We have seats dedicated specifically for members of the business community, folks under 30, women, Latino, Latina, the Black community, and we want to ensure that we are keeping those seats filled and filling them in the most appropriate, equal way. So right now we have a vacancy for the women's seat. We may have more than that actually, but the women's seat was previously filled by Amy Espinoza, who is no longer able to attend. And we will be filling that, but in either February or March, we're going to be bringing this committee some proposals for how the structure of the committee could be maybe adjusted, make some minor modifications to ensure we're getting that geographic, demographic representation that we desire. That wasn't the most articulate explanation of what we're hoping to accomplish, but it will be very clear cut when we present it to you in February and March. All that is to say, there are some vacancies. We have a backlog of folks who are interested in filling them. We haven't moved forward because we want to get your buy-in for any structural changes that may occur in the future. So that ends my spiel. I apologize for kind of going a little bit off the topic. The proposed action for this committee is to take no action, because although there have been members with 3 or more absences in a row, we've reached out to that agency and they're seeking to correct that in the future. So we don't feel that the committee needs to take any action to kick anyone off.
Thank you, Dr. Wong. Rick Fernandez.
Thank you, Chair. Hey, Johnny, can you hear me all right?
Yes, I can.
Okay, a couple of questions for you. First, I'm just going to focus on my attendance record here. Maybe others have a similar question. As I go across the spreadsheet, I see my name, and then I go to the column for January and February, and it says no in both of those boxes. I believe I was here, but I wasn't here as the Hispanic guy. I was here as the District 3 guy, kind of left over from Les Miller's appointment. So is that what that is? Does that mean there was no Hispanic rep here for those 2 meetings, so I get tagged with that? Or was I actually not here and I just got dropped on my head and I forgot?
The previous is actually the correct way to interpret this. So we, rather than focusing on the individual occupying that seat who's listed under this column of CSC member, we're focusing on the representative who should be filling in a specific seat. So yes, you were here, Rick, for the January and February meetings as Les Miller's rep. We did not include Les Miller under here because that seat no longer exists. It has been filled by a new rep. So although there are 2 no's by your name, that's just indicating that the Latino rep at the time was absent. It's not indicative of Rick Fernandez not showing up.
Okay. Well,
does that make sense?
Yeah, that clarifies it.
It's a little tricky because there were several new county commissioners elected during the course of 2021. So we had to try to be mindful of not overwhelming you with information from a no longer available. I hope that makes sense.
Okay, yeah, no, I was lobbying for the perfect attendance trophy for the year, that's all. Okay, no worries. The other question, just clarification, I don't understand what you meant by this. You said that 2 representatives from THEA are here today. What does that mean?
So I see that Jeff Lucas is on the call, and he is currently serving as the rep for THEA. Ed Majerski is also here, and he did not announce himself as being present. I think he just may be sitting in, but not officially counting toward the quorum. He will be the THEA rep beginning in February and throughout the rest of 2022 and 23.
Okay.
That's correct.
So if there are any action items to vote on, only 1 vote will be allowed from THEA.
Okay, and we're getting Ed back. You're telling us?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
We're getting Ed back, and Jeff is stepping off.
That's correct, Rick.
Okay, well, cool, and I'm sorry, and Ed, welcome back. Been here before, and you know the family. Cool. All right, thanks.
All right. Johnny, I would just make 2 observations. One, as you consider the restructuring of the committee, I would ask you to take a look at the geographic representation. We have been blessed with some good representation recently from South County. I think that area was underrepresented on this committee in the past. And the second suggestion, and I've I want to be sure the committee understands I'm not lobbying for a position, but we have a representative for under 30. We might want to consider a representation from an over certain age in order to reflect the demographic representation of the county. And again, I'm not seeking that position, but I think it might be worth taking a look at.
Thank you both.
Chair, may I be recognized? This is Terrence.
Terrence, go ahead.
Hey, Dr. Wong, thanks for, always reviewing this stuff and keeping us administratively sound and everything. I just wanted to say, and I don't know, I'm just asking, is Hispanic origin, that term, for example, I'm hearing Latinx used in the community more, to be more inclusive possibly, just something to maybe think about, just to better describe the diaspora of Latinos, Latinas. Thank you.
Thank you, Terrence. I have, like you, heard of several different ways to refer to these ethnic and racial groups. I would probably defer to the, I'll use the current term, the Hispanic representative, to let us know which term is the preferred way to refer to that community. But again, I'm open to making that change per the request of the representative. So we can make that change if they would like.
Okay, good observation, Terrence. Other comments? Well, Johnny, thank you for the report. Thank you for the no action item.
Bill, I see Hoyt has his hand raised.
Oh, I'm sorry. Hoyt, you're right.
So just a comment on the Latinx term, as someone who dates someone that is Hispanic and Latino, I think that while the term Latinx has good intentions in terms of its use, I have found, and I think my significant other would confirm this, that the use of the term Latinx amongst the Latino or Hispanic community themselves is not widely accepted nor preferred. So I certainly would defer to Mr. Fernandez or anyone else that has comments on that, but I just thought I would share that. And I think if you look at news reports, there's a lot of debate about the origins of the term Latinx and whether or not that's something that the community itself really chose to identify as, or whether that was others outside of the community making an observation on the appropriateness of gender-based language and what terms should be used. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. All right, any other comments on the attendance report and recommendations? If not, we'll move to our next agenda item, which is the Safe Access to Parks Pilot Study. Lisa, are you going to give this presentation? I hope.
Lisa, if you're on, I'm going to make you the presenter. And Lisa, you're muted.
I unmuted myself. Can you hear me now?
Okay. Okay. Yep, sure can.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to turn controls over to you.
All right, show my screen.
Morning, Lisa.
Morning. Can't see you, so I'm not sure who I'm saying hi to. Okay. Here we go. All right. You seeing my title slide?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Good morning and happy 2022. I'm going to try to liven things up and show you some interesting information. Not that attendance isn't exciting, but anyway, so I'm going to go very fast through the first portion because I did bring this information as a status report to the committees in September, but that was a long time ago and some of us had breaks and forgot some things. So I'm just going to highlight some of the first tasks and then slow down when we get to the new and updated recommendations information. So as you know, we developed a Vision Zero plan in 2017, followed quickly by a speed management action plan in 2019. The Park Speed Zone project was just one of many implementation steps to help us prioritize and set lower speed limits, implement engineering countermeasures, and achieve desired speeds, and thus reduce the severe and fatal injuries on our roadways. With over 200 people killed on our roadways in collisions every year, this is an important step for Vision Zero. So we kicked off the project in March with a stakeholder meeting to review the park selection process, receive feedback on our finalist park recommendations. In September, I told you I met with you all, and we shared our preliminary existing conditions assessment, the progress on our public outreach, and we heard your feedback related to the project name, and have since rebranded the project Safe Access to Parks. That more accurately reflects what we're up to anyway. So as a perfect suggestion, in fall, we completed the countermeasure toolbox, which is a bunch of fix-it ideas, and then we applied the strategies of the toolbox to each of our study locations. Today, we're going to quickly review the first 4 steps and refresh everyone's memory, and then we're going to spend the bulk of the time talking about the. So that's another more citizen-friendly name for countermeasures toolbox. So that's synonymous there. We did have 3 parks. This is a pilot study, so we applied this to 3 varying types of parks. I will also stop and point out that I'm going in to just highlight a lot of great information that's on our website. So the park selection criteria that we used, which used a lot of equity and safety factors, is posted online. The list of over 440 parks in their order of prioritization according to that criteria, also online. Our existing conditions online, all this great information online. So, all right, so the park selection process was data-driven, considered a wide array. We prioritized 40% for equity, 40% for safety, and 20% for some other miscellaneous things. As I mentioned, you can go into the details of that if you visit that report online. The 3 different parks were 3 distinct different parks, and then the different context settings for each of them. So we had local, passive regional, active regional, and linear. We scoped for 3 parks, but kind of got 5-ish because there were some adjacent parks that the consultant went ahead and threw in the analysis. Okay, so we conducted the existing conditions assessment for areas around each of the parks and looked at other studies that have been conducted in the area. So like up in Copeland, we looked at the Fowler Avenue studies. Wade Reynolds's trail alignment was near some of our parks, so we coordinated on those. We looked at best practices nationally for other safe route studies. And then we created a web mapping tool to help seek feedback. So some key findings, I'm gonna hit some highlights. So in the Copeland Park, that was our regional active park that was selected. It has a bigger draw than the next park I'm gonna show you. So all this really great mobile phone data helped us see when and where people were coming, of course, anonymously, but we saw that they were coming and biking and walking from a 3-mile radius. And then we observed that there were a lot of uncomfortable pedestrian facilities connecting to the park. Even the entrances to the parks don't allow for someone to exit the sidewalk to walk into the thing other than getting in the driveway. So there's a lot we can do to help make that safer and better for everyone. And there are no designated bicycle facilities in and around it. For Sulphur Springs, you can see the blue dots are way more concentrated. So the people are coming from a 1-mile radius. So that helps us and look where we look to evaluate. It also had the inconsistent and uncomfortable facilities, even on site and adjacent, no bicycle facilities. There was even some opportunity in the area to look at vacating some right of way and realigning the roads to improve safety there, as well as travel speeds. So our linear park was the Upper Tampa Bay Trail. It had a completely different draw. It was very regional and a bigger draw for destination. It's very difficult to get there in a non-motorized way. So it's very much designed for vehicular access, even at its trailheads and its adjacency with the close neighborhoods. So we have a lot of recommendations on how to improve that and explore those opportunities. Whoops, page back up. Okay. Then we launched into our public feedback campaign, and tried to be very creative given COVID. We had great timing in that we were kind of in that lull between the big Delta and Omicron. So we did have one in-person engagement as well. So this is an illustration of what we turned into yard signs and placed all along all the parks and at adjacent transit centers. They were also then waterproof poster sized and laminated and posted at various locations in and around the community. Then we took it and turned it into an electronic flyer and sent it out to all the homeowners associations and neighborhood groups, and the American Disabilities lists that were provided by the different jurisdictions. And when we came to you guys in September, we asked for your help in distributing this, and we really appreciate any of that that you've provided us, because we did get some feedback. So this is an example of the online feedback that was solicited. We did multiple ways. We had this online mapping tool, so you could go on and comment on all 3 parks or just one. It was in both English and Spanish. Then we also had kind of an old-fashioned survey. Some people prefer to write up their comments and answer specific questions, so we probed them to get the kind of feedback we needed, especially for when we can't visit during all times of the day that they're experiencing the parks. So they had both methods. Some people are very visual and like to place their comments on a specific area. So here's a summary of what we heard around the Copeland Park. We got almost 50 comments. 44% were related to people speeding, 21% related to inadequate pedestrian infrastructure, and 10% related to the inadequate lighting, frequency of transit being insufficient, inadequate bike infrastructure, and the other issues received less than 10% of the comments. 10 of the comments. Okay, and in Sulphur Springs, we got 25 comments, and they were received primarily through the web map. 16% were related to the speeding, 40% to the inadequate pedestrian amenities, and 16% for lighting. And then transit was insufficient, was at 8%. Biking was 16%, and the other issues were 4%. I think this is really cool because I think a picture's worth 1,000 words. So this online mapping thing, we got lower comments in Sulphur Springs, but we had the highest numbers of pictures that illustrated the feedback that they were commenting on. So we got to see right there firsthand what they were mentioning. So in the Upper Tampa Bay Trail area, we got 29 comments through the web map, 14% related to speeding, 10 pedestrian infrastructure, 14 lighting. And here we heard that bike infrastructure was inadequate at the tune of 52%. And then our miscellaneous were in the 7% range. So that was the mapping. This is the survey. So this is just an illustration of all the things that people typed in, but we have lots of them. And did I mention they're all summarized in those really great online documents, but I won't go into all the details. I'll just give you a couple of hints of what the flavor was like. So we would say, how do you typically get to the park or trail? So 88 of the people across all the parks answered saying 17% walk, 42% bicycle, 38% drive. Is it when you're thinking about going to the trail, where do you feel unsafe on bicycle and why? And so these were some of the questions that we got. This is an example of our outreach in person. So we went outside, took the easels with the maps that proposed the fix-it ideas and sought their feedback on it. We had it on October 29th, so we tried to entice everybody over to our table with trick-or-treats and little goodies for handouts and stuff. So we were very pleased that we talked with over 20 people at each location. Overwhelmingly, the feedback was positive. Each park had its own unique challenges to get people's feedback. At Copeland, it's very large and a lot of variety of uses on site. So we put more resources there and sent them out with the flyers and sent them out and asked them to come over and provide feedback on the maps. It's a high Hispanic community, so we had native Spanish speakers also walking around to be available. At Upper Tampa Bay, it was very long and linear and a lot of miles to cover, so we headed out on our bicycles and distributed the flyers. At Sulphur Springs, we had a little bit of showers, and so it was a little inclement, so not everybody was headed to the pool like we'd hoped that day, but we did get all of the lifeguards and all of the law enforcement, and then several of the citizens that did come to use the facilities there to provide their feedback. Okay, and then we developed a safety countermeasure toolbox that included 90 countermeasures in 6 different categories. Many of them had speed reduction component, but a lot of them cross-cut across and had multiple benefits, especially safe access. So we, that's another reason why it was really perfectly acceptable to accept the idea of the stakeholder group to rename it to be a lot more consistent with what we were accomplishing, safe access to parks. Okay, so now we're going to get to the ideas. So here's Copeland's Fix-It ideas. The toolbox was applied to each park location with preliminary Fix-It ideas that were developed. We then took those ideas out on the October 29th and asked for their feedback. The people were given a whole set of green dots and red dots to note the ideas and rank them, you know, positive, negative. Across all 3 park location, not one red dot was placed. We were like, oh, they love all the ideas. So we went through each one in a bit more. We'll go through those in a bit more detail. This is just kind of the overall. And okay, here we go. So in Copeland, we had 21 Fix-It ideas. 9 were general ideas to fix general issues, and 12 were location specific. 2 of those were bike. 5 were intersection and roadway, 12 walking facilities, and 2 were in the other. So around Copeland, most of the ideas were walking, and that's what we heard in the survey as well. And so it matched up with our analysis, and it included ideas like implementing traffic calming, reducing crossing distance at intersections, and adding more marked and controlled crosswalks. And again, there's a lot of these, and this is a small little inset of the map. These maps are in their large original format online if anybody wants to take a deeper dive. At Sulphur Springs, the pink post-its are new ideas they came up with, and the green dots are kind of them ranking the ones that we saw as ideas that we wanted to test. So they had a lot of great feedback and some things that we could not have known because, you know, we didn't know the vacant building in their parking lot was a problem, but they did. So that was really awesome to discover. So in Sulphur Springs, we had another 21 Fix-It ideas. 9 were general and 12 location specific. Most of the ideas fell into the walking category again, which includes adding more sidewalks, providing better connections to the River Tower Park. This is where one of those ones where we got kind of a twofer because the regional passive park of the River Tower is right adjacent to it, but it's like they don't exist next door to each other except for like a boardwalk that's kind of decrepit and scary. So adding improvements and doing a whole complete streets overhaul of Bird Street and providing that connection are some of the big ideas here. Raised crosswalks at locations, relocation of the transit stops, improving the circulation and biking throughout the whole general area. So we have some neighborhood ideas there. You can see in the little blow up here, that's where we're like at the entrance, kind of redesigning the whole intersection there to make it better. All these ideas have been ground truth with City of Tampa staff. So at Upper Tampa Bay, the trail's rather long, so we took 2 boards to show all of the ideas in the northern and the southern section. And here's the feedback on the southern section. We identified 28 Fix-It ideas, 8 were general, 20 specific. A lot of bicycle facility ideas, 8 of those, 3 for the intersection, 6 walking, 2 signals, signing and striping were other issues that were problems. So most of the ideas fell in that bicycle category, which included completing the 2-mile gap at the northern extents of our study, widening some portions of the trail that were narrow, evaluating and upgrading bicycle facilities on the roads, and other specific things like crossings, wayfinding, and a speed limit on the trail. So even on the trail, it was determined that speeding was an issue, especially with all the new e-bikes and things, and there aren't any posted speeds any longer. So we had a lot of great things, and then of that feedback, we changed some things. Like I already told you, we changed the project name. We identified some additional Fix-It ideas based on the feedback. All of this is lengthy and in the report. Then one of our final deliverables is a how-to guide, because as I mentioned, this is a pilot study. There's just 3 of the over 440 parks that we have been blessed with in this area. So we're doing an outline to help our local jurisdictions take the next projects, the next parks on the list, like 4, 5, 6, and then, you know, they're already ranked for them, and then how to then go ahead and apply this example toolbox to future parks. We have completed the study, so if you have comments or recommendations, now's the time to float them. But I'm here as an action item to ask you to recommend approval to the TPO board. At this time, it's scheduled for the February meeting with a lot of other safety topics. That concludes the presentation.
You, Lisa, was a quick job, but a good report. Thank you for bringing it to us. Other questions from the committee members? Anyone in the room have a question or comment? Yes, Josh Frank.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Great presentation, Lisa. Quick question. You talked about some concurrent studies that you guys had worked with, collaborating to get some ongoing information from. I was wondering, just out of curiosity, if 2 of those that might be relevant. One is the BRT study that HART and HDR have been completing. I know personally I'll have some feedback about Bird Street and others for that one related to Sulphur Springs Park and the water tower park. So I don't know if you've checked that one, but that one I know for sure at least has at least not my comment on that. So maybe others, especially I think considering Nebraska and the Florida Ave corridors are considered for that. And then the second one would be for Copeland Park. This board, this committee saw the presentation from Kittleson last week or last month on the trail alignment. That also talked about Sulphur Springs and Copeland Park, I believe, specifically. So I'm assuming that one was one that you coordinated with, but I just wanted to confirm that.
Yes, I said it very fast. Definitely the USF Green Artery Trail study, we even kind of try to partner our outreach and help each other get it distributed jointly and together and make everybody aware of both studies. So everybody, the communities would provide feedback on both, but definitely I coordinated with Ray Reynolds and the consultant Kittleson as we develop these studies. So they're using theirs and we're using theirs. And the BRT study is mentioned in the Sulphur Springs report, and some of the detailed recommendations include making that, you know, taking it, recognizing that there's transit-oriented development, especially north of there. There's recommendations down the way on Florida and all the on-off ramps and stuff. So getting to the park, you know, and going beyond just adjacent to the park, those are definitely great recommendations. And yes, those reports were reflected, but thank you for confirming.
Yeah. And just one last point. I think for the Green Artery one, it might be useful to at least show some of the preliminary corridors on your maps with where the improvements are going to be and recommendations are going to be, because it, you know, just thinking of Sulphur Springs, for example, one of the recommendations from the Green Artery study showed a new bridge crossing the Hillsborough River at where there used to be an old bridge, I think in the 20s or 30s, at Van Dyke or whatever road that is there. You know, in your recommendations, you show the end of Van Dyke or Van Dyke being a cul-de-sac. So, you know, those two things maybe aren't in concert with one another in terms of best practices, having a trail that is also sort of a car-oriented cul-de-sac that also has a bridge. So I think that lens maybe could use another look before we get to recommendations.
Okay, great. Yes, and one of the other committees pointed out Hillsborough County's Parks Department's properties are very close and adjacent to the city of Tampa, Sulphur Springs, and so we're going to include and reflect that coordination more as well. You know, a lot of great assets in there that need to be considered. So yeah, I noted that, so maybe we can show the alignment right on the final fix-it idea map.
All right, thank you, Josh. Other questions of Lisa or comments on the report? Anyone online have a question for Lisa? I don't see any hands.
I see Christina Costa's in-person hand.
Christine, what have
You're facing this way. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Lisa, this is just such great work. I really commend you on it. I just have a couple comments and ideas in sort of in keeping with Josh's remarks about what other things are going on with which this is consistent and can be blended. I just want to remind you that Mayor Castor's transportation development team, when she first became mayor under Dr. Bertini, that group suggested as a key point the utilization of any trails and park space be contributed to the active transportation network. So there's a goal setting that is consistent with what you're developing here, and I think that that's valuable to all listening constituents. The next thing I want to say is may seem like a tiny nuance, but I think it's very powerful. Obviously, the consistency at all our parks, and I'm sure everyone listening was thinking about their own parks and those that they're familiar with. Speeding or speeding adjacent to parks, and no human scale entrances. Everything being car centric. We should not have to drive to our parks to access them safely. But my point is this: when we use the term speeding, it infers misbehavior on the part of a motorist. When in actuality, thanks to the speed study that you have done and that TPO commissioned, we know most of our speeds are set too high. So excessive speeds, or referencing the speed study rather than speeding, the speeds that are set too high is the responsibility of the system owners and operators, whereas speeding puts the onus solely on system users as creating the problem. So I just want to say that out loud and suggest that there's cross-referencing of, most of our speeds are set too high. Some of them are set ridiculously higher than what is nationally recommended. And you can cross-reference the speed study. It reflects here in these, what we're hearing from the community in terms of getting to their parks.
Okay. On the speeding point, yeah, we used to call it the park speed zone study. It really was speed management in and around a park, kind of like, schools are special places and has special zones around them. This is perceived to make parks a special place and have traffic and roadways be designed appropriately for everyone to behave at lower speeds and safer design getting to and from. So I'm sorry if that wasn't communicated as correctly. But since we're addressing beyond speed, they decided the name would be better reflected as safe access. But yeah, it's definitely a speed management plan as well.
Anyone online comment or question?
Or
I'm not seeing any questions in the chat, but if someone is virtual and wants to ask a question, feel free to unmute yourself.
All right. This is an action item for our committee today. We do have a quorum here present. Thank you, Lisa, for that excellent presentation. Covered a lot of ground, but I will entertain a motion to recommend this report on to the TPO board at their next meeting. Someone care to make that motion? Anyone in the room care to make a motion to recommend this to the TPO board?
Mr. Chairman, this is Christina Costa, I will recommend that we advance this and recommend to the TPO board.
Thank you, Christine. We have a motion. Do we have a second to the motion from someone here?
This is Rick. I'll second. This is Rick Richmond.
Rick Richmond seconds online. Thank you. Any discussion on the motion to recommend this to the TPO board? Rick Fernandez.
I have a question. Obviously, nobody has to answer it. Direct to everyone through you, Chair. I was just curious. There was an unusual delay calling for a second to that motion. Was there anything in particular about the presentation that caused anyone to have a concern about this? It just hasn't been voiced yet, or are we just shy today?
Anyone feeling shy today?
I guess no.
Not normal for this committee. Yeah, go ahead.
I just have to say, you're ready to raise my hand, but I didn't think the pause was exceptionally long. I think the pause was exceptionally long for the initial motion, but not the second.
Yeah.
I was ready to slow down.
Okay, I was wondering if I missed something. All right, thanks.
Any discussion on the motion to recommend to the TPO board? I see no hands on my screen and no hands in the room. Let's take a roll call vote, if you will. Gail, call the roll. All those in favor of the motion, speak affirmative.
Bill Roberts,
Yes?
Rick Fernandez,
Yep.
David Bailey,
Yes.
Carolyn Brown,
Yes.
Hoyt Prindle,
Yes.
Christina Bosworth,
Yes.
Miaza Morrison,
Yes.
Stephen Hollenkamp,
Yes.
Alexis Bobak,
Yes.
Christine Acosta,
Yes.
Artie Fryer, Don Skelton,
Yes.
Jeff Lucas,
Yes.
Jonathan Knudsen,
Yes.
Sharon Gamond, Terrence Trott,
Yes.
Rick Richmond,
Yes.
Josh Frank.
Yes.
The motion passes 16-0 with 2 non-votes.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Chair, if I may.
We have a point of order, sorry.
I just want to make sure that the roll is reflected that Nicholas Glover is here, that I'm a yes vote as well.
All right. Gail, did you get that?
Who was speaking?
Nicholas Glover,
Oh, thank you. And you're in person?
in person, and my vote is also yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I thought you asked if I was a person.
I have that recorded. Thank you.
Nick joined us some time ago. We know he's here. Thank you, Nick, for being sure everybody was recording. Thank you. Anything else? All right.
Chair, if I may, just a comment,
Yes.
even though it's after the vote and it wouldn't. And I think, I support this this effort and a lot of good information. And I think that a few of the members had hit on it, but I do want to reiterate it too. And I'm only picking on Sulphur Springs because I'm familiar with the area. I think there's probably opportunities in Copeland and Upper Tampa Bay Trail, but next to Sulphur Springs, you have 4 or 5 parks that are within a 2-mile area. So I hope, and I'm talking like Rolette, you have 22nd Street Park, and then there's some pocket parks along the river. I hope as these opportunities are identified for improvements that the green artery and then other improvements to access these other parks are considered and lumped into a overall comprehensive project for park connectivity. So, and Christina and Josh, you alluded to that, but I think it's very important that the TPO and Tampa view this as a comprehensive improvement for mobility to parks. So that's all. Thank you.
That's a great point. And given that this is this detailed, our consultant points out that these were like 80% ready for grants. So they could be consolidated and pursued for Parks and Recreation grants or, mobility grants. There's a lot of opportunities out there. So I will communicate this to the stakeholders of each jurisdiction when we transmit it and point that opportunity out.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kelly. All right, that concludes the action items on our agenda today. The next item is we move into the status reports, and we have a City of Tampa Neighborhood Commercial District Plan. Mr. Hall, are you available to do this presentation?
Yes, I am.
Good, welcome.
Thank you. If I may share my screen. Okay.
Frank, I sent the request over. I think you have to accept it before it'll let you show your PowerPoint. Do you see that?
I am not seeing the request or the option.
All right, let me take it back and then try to give it back to you.
Okay.
Okay, it's coming in right now.
Outstanding. There we go. All right. Please let me know if you see my screen.
Yes.
Okay. Which screen are you seeing? Are you seeing the whole screen?
We're seeing the presentation view, or we're seeing the presenter view.
Okay, one moment. Let's see if I can fix that for you.
There we go.
All right. Now I'm gonna change that over. Is that better?
Yes.
Outstanding. I appreciate your taking the time today to let me share some of our findings. For those of you who do not know me, I am Frank Hall. I'm with the Planning Department, the city's newly formed Planning Department. I'm fairly new to the city. I'm originally from Hawaii, but I have been working on a number of different, on various corridor projects throughout the country. So this sort of thing is near and dear to my heart. I really appreciate, the fact that this program was started by the city. With that, I will see if I can get this thing rolling for you. Excuse me. The origin of this program stemmed from the city council motion back in September of 2019. It requested the city staff work together with planning commission staff to develop a neighborhood commercial planning district program, with the hope essentially of taking some of the recommendations and findings and applying them to every single council district in the city in one way, shape, or form over the next few years. Let's see here. Okay. And what we did was we were a little challenged because of COVID and the inability of a lot of staff members to reach out in person, but we did reach out quite a bit. We went through a handful of in-person meetings. We had quite a few virtual meetings and quite a few one-on-one phone conversations with community members and business owners and landowners throughout both corridors. So it's given the constraints, I think that we did a fairly good job with public engagement. It's by far not nearly as broad as we would have liked, but in the upcoming corridor studies, we will be reaching out more efficiently and effectively with the community. Now, when we talk about these community redevelopment commercial district plans, we're essentially looking at what many would refer to as Main Street processes, and as I'm sure most of you are aware, that is taking into consideration, scalability, accessibility, and usefulness for universal access. We want to make sure that not only is the community able to access services and products that they need, but that the neighborhood and corridor itself are attractive and potentially magnets for residents from other parts of the city and from cities, from other cities that come to visit Tampa. So when you look at these images, you see, you'll hopefully see a few similarities. You're looking at, again, scalability. You're looking at buffering from the street to between the pedestrians and oncoming traffic. You're looking at the ability for users of the corridor to not only get the services they need, but feel comfortable and safe, essentially. So when we're looking at these types of things and we discuss main streets, what we're doing is we're looking at a number of accessibility issues, walkability issues, access to goods and services, on-street parking, vehicular and pedestrian uses. Our project, these two pilot projects focused on two distinct areas in town. One was in the Palmacia area in South Tampa, and the other one was in West Tampa. They're very different demographically, so they face different challenges. But what we found, and what you'll find if you were to go in more depth with the study, is that a lot of the requirements, a lot of the concerns were the same. Every community wants safe, walkable, connected, thriving, beautiful main streets. We want to be able to say, this is something that the community needs, something that the community can use, and it's reflective of the character and historic relevance of the neighborhood. So regardless of where these studies are done, we want them to reflect the needs of the community. When you look at what most of the study elements for the purpose of this study, we're going to use Palmacia because we feel it was representative of a lot of the safety and access concerns that we see throughout the city. Main Street, the sidewalks were a little wider. At this point in time, there was far less vehicular traffic, particularly on Main Street. Howard is a different issue, nonetheless. There's a lot of through traffic on Howard, and we know that. But for the purposes of this study, we felt that when we're addressing public and pedestrian access, that the examples were more relevant when we refer them from the Palmacia study. When we looked at the study, we looked at when we looked, say, for both areas, we looked at similar issues: population and employment trends, economic development trends, access, and safety. The safety issues that Palmacia was concerned with were completely different in some senses than the safety issues that were of concern on Main Street in West Tampa. On Main Street in West Tampa, there was a lot of concern about personal safety due to crime or drug use, whereas on Palmacia, the safeties were more pedestrian related in terms of traffic, bike routes, speeding, and those types of issues. So we believe in the future that we're going to find a mix of both of these concerns. So that's why, again, we chose these two as pilot programs, because we feel that the findings and the potential solutions that we develop through this process can be combined and implemented citywide. When we, again, as I've been referring to on and off thus far, when we look at any corridor, we're looking at a set process for examining strengths and weaknesses throughout the corridor. We're looking at constraints and opportunities. Of course, you take a look at things like economic analysis and demographic analysis. But that's the type of stuff that you can get on paper. You can get, they're statistics. What the key for all of these studies is boots on the ground. We need to get a real sense of what's going on in the community rather than just simply looking at the numbers. So while these numbers are good for supporting a direction, they're not reflective. They can't be reflective unless you get some sort of context. So when we continue with any one of these projects from here on in, we're going to be spending a lot more time walking through the communities, talking to the business owners, talking to landowners, talking to residents, and trying to find out what's important to them and how we can develop a plan that reflects those needs. Again, this is just an example of one of the concerns that we had on Beta Bay. The majority of, a good portion rather, of the traffic flow on Beta Bay is through traffic. It's coming from other parts of town, and it's going, it's not really reflective of the traffic patterns that stem from the neighborhood itself. And their concern primarily was speeding. There was a reference to speeding in the previous presentation, but the residents feel that due to a number of combined infrastructure shortfalls, and like you can see here, you see the narrow sidewalks, you see pieces of infrastructure, utility poles blocking right of way, or not blocking right of way, so blocking pedestrian right ways. And if they're not blocking, they're uncomfortably close to pedestrians. So you're not finding, or the residents weren't finding that they felt comfortable going and using a lot of those commercial elements that were on Beta Bay. So along with that, when you combine that with speeding through traffic, people just didn't feel safe. So one of the concerns that we're looking at is how do we address pedestrian safety? How do we address setbacks of structures along the corridor? How are we addressing bike lanes? Because there was a lot of feedback for bicycle uses, not only on this corridor, but citywide. These are a number of issues that we are going to address, not only here on the Beta Bay, but we're hoping to address them citywide before it reaches a point where we have to modify infrastructure intensively. What you see here is a rendering that was supplied to us through a joint project. We worked really closely with students from USF for this project, where they, so they can give us some insight from newly minted planners or planners to be that aren't encumbered with a lot of the things that we know of from our daily experience. We don't deal, they were unencumbered with the zoning issues. They were aware of them, but they didn't really make them central to their decision making. They came up with some really creative approaches, and all of these things are going to be are available on our websites for both of these plans. But this is just an example of a rendering approach to potential solutions. What I wanted to pull out here is on the lower left-hand side rather, these key points. They called out curb widths, they called out sidewalk widths, they called out a whole bunch of issues to reduce or slow down or minimize potential vehicular and pedestrian conflicts. This is just an example of some of the elements that we used for strategies and solutions, and called out some potential time frames. And we, without calling out specific costs, we gave a cost range for some of these potential solutions. And again, these are all available on our website, but we just wanted to give you, I just wanted to give you an example of the types of strategies and how we broke them down, and the types of recommendations we were getting for some of these strategies, some timelines to implement these, and relative costs. And then, of course, we called out some next steps and actions. This again is just a close-up of one of those issues, just in case we had a few issues seeing my previous page. when we come to recommendations, a lot of these recommendations can be cost effective. They do not have to be expensive. A lot of these can be pilot projects just to see whether or not they're effective, number one, whether or not whether there's positive or negative feedback from the community. So, and they're by definition temporary. And if they seem to work well, then we can apply we can attempt to apply them on a long-term basis. But here are some examples. On your left-hand side, you'll see the Selman underpass and the CSX Railroad. On your right, you'll see examples of how some rail to trail examples were successful. I believe one is in Dunedin, the other one is, I believe, in Tarpon Springs. But those were examples of taking rail right-of-way and making it more accessible to pedestrians and making it an asset for the community rather than a barrier. And again, you'll see that, again, we have an example of taking the area under the Selman as it exists and what it could be. These are just potential renderings, but the key is to allow yourself to think outside of the box, think creatively, and recognize that there are options that are inexpensive. This is just an example on Florida Avenue of a parcel that is not pedestrian friendly. It could be potentially unsafe, and how it's transitioning from an unsightly lot to a more pedestrian friendly approach. This is in its process. This is nearing its completion. One key thing that I want to note here is that green strip right along the freeway, right along the road there, was the approximate width of the initial sidewalk. So the point here is that with proper zoning and setbacks and design requirements, you can take a relatively unsightly, unsafe parcel and make it into something that's pedestrian friendly and economically viable. This is just an example of some of the elements that we found in our Main Street study, and this is how we went about looking at some of the existing elements and how they can change. This was just a SketchUp that was done by, I believe, one of the USF students, but this is the process that we go through when we're addressing some of the initial design elements. Key thing I want to point out here is that through our process, at this point in time, 47.5% of the recommendations that we put through initially are either underway or in the planning stage for implementation. So I believe that I'm really pleased that, even though this is a relatively new proposal, that there's been a lot of positive feedback in the community, and they're chomping at the bit to get some of these things put in place. So we're really working diligently to address a lot of their concerns, and so that they can see that this is not just a pie in the sky idea, that they're going to feel that they're going to see and feel a lot of their recommendations put in place. And if we can keep the residents actively involved in every step of the process, we're more likely to be successful. This is just a rendering example of what could be done on Main Street if we were able to implement a lot of our recommendations. You'll note here we have on-street parking. On-street parking acts not only as a traffic calming element, but a buffer, a safety buffer for pedestrians on the sidewalk. It gives them a perceived sense of safety. Both of our studies and all the information that supported these studies are available on our website. And in a lot more detail. So I encourage you to all take a look at the site and look over those plans. And if you have any questions or concerns at that point, of course, you can always reach out to me and I can elaborate, or we can discuss elements that caught your eye in one way, shape, or form. But again, the point here is that everything that we have is on our website and accessible to you and to the public. What have we learned through this, and what are our next steps? We came away with a lot of good, solid information. We think that it's a viable program, and we plan to continue to target at least one of these, one corridor a year, to get again keep the interest up, and to see whether or not only can some of these urban design elements can be applied, but how can we modify our code? How can we modify our comprehensive plan so that we can take some of these items and hopefully replicate them fairly easily at some point from corridor to corridor. Our next study is we've got it already targeted for 15th Street. I believe the area is fairly large. It's going to be from the I-4 corridor up to Lake Avenue, I believe. We're in discussions to see whether or not that's too large of a corridor to have the impact that we'd like. But tentatively, that's our plan, to cover that entire distance. The reason we chose it is because we believe that it's got a good mix of commercial and residential uses, and it's a good, solid representation of corridors throughout the city. And we feel that if we can implement a good, solid design plan here, that a lot of the elements can be replicated fairly easily. We have already awarded a $50,000 grant. We're in the process of finding a consultant, and we hope to get this completed fairly quickly this year. Because it's a consultant-led process, we believe that we can get it done within 6 or 8 months. But the key is to walk away with solutions that can be replicated. Do we have any questions or concerns or suggestions?
Paul, thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
A lot of ground to cover there. Thanks, recognized.
Great presentation, and I'm very happy to see these projects moving forward. Replicating 20 years is really long needed. Two points. One point on the question. The first is, as an alum, I'd be remiss to on SAAD on your slide.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm sorry, but you're fading in and out, and so I'm only getting bits and pieces of what you're asking.
Somebody has to go on mute.
Yeah.
Wherever that laughter's coming from, if you could hit mute.
So
that's it.
I'll skip that one because it's not relevant. But the biggest point is, I think a lot of what you're showing in Bay to Bay and 15th Street and Main Street and some of these others is something that the community's been asking for a long time, which is an update to the form-based code or a new form-based code, either citywide or specific to some of these corridors as an overlay district, however that may take shape. And to me, that's something that is not only dependable in terms of what you can get back from the development side of things, but also dependable in what you are putting forth as a vision for what these corridors should be. And it's probably the best tool to do so. And on top of that, it's something that isn't necessarily the most expensive or time-consuming effort to be done. So I would just encourage you and the city and the consultants you're working with, that seems to be an item that may float to the top and be something that can be tackled either concurrently for, immediately after each of these studies, because I think what you'll find is that example image you showed, that Florida and Idlewild is in, I believe, one of the only areas covered by a form-based code in the city. So the reason why we have good setbacks and wide sidewalks and on-street parking and all the things that come with a commercial corridor like that is because we have a form-based code, not necessarily because the developer had, a warm intentions that specific for that specific project. So I think that above else, that to me is something that should be a very high priority. And I know, having lived in Seminole Heights and other communities that have been asking for a form-based code, it's been something that has been talked about as far back as Mayor Iorio, and it seems to never really go anywhere. So I'm encouraged to see this project, and I would hope that that's going to be one of the conclusions, if not the biggest conclusion that comes forth from it. So thank you.
You're very welcome. Just to your point, yes, I'm a big proponent of form-based code personally, but there are, and we're well aware of the push, particularly in Seminole Heights, for a form-based code approach. The issue is a fairly complicated one, though. It's easier. It's not quite as easy to enforce form-based code, believe it or not, in some areas. But that's before we get in the weeds. The whole process, the concept is, I agree with it, and we are working to take a better look, a closer look at our comprehensive plan and our zoning code to see what elements need to be changed. We are in the process of our 5-year update for the comp plan right now. We're taking everything that we hear seriously, and we're really trying to take a look at what's redundant, what's irrelevant, and what needs to be, reflecting current requirements and needs. So yes, we are working at modifying our approach to development. And I saw your look of a little consternation there, so to speak, when I mentioned how complex form-based code can be to implement. It's not that the idea is so foreign. It's just that we would require more enforcement. So it's just one of those things that we're working through at this point.
I understand that. I appreciate your comments. That my look was more or less because I just have to be writing 3 of them right now. So I know how complicated it can be, but at the end of the day, it is a very successful team that I think not only has our city had demonstrable successes with, as we shown, but also is something that is going to be a great way to achieve all of the things that we want to achieve on Bay to Bay, 15th Street, etc. So I don't need to go on, but I think that that's going to be one of the key ways to accomplish it. I appreciate your answer.
Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. Comments, Christina Costa?
Thank you, Mr. Hall, and welcome to Tampa. Your career history of commercial corridor development is warmly received here, and we are glad to have you. Very, very familiar with the Palmacia study. And I have just a couple of points. Yes.
Someone has their microphone on. I'd ask you to mute your microphone. Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, thanks. Frank, I wonder if I could encourage you, instead of conveying a rails to trail conversion where there are many good examples, there are also excellent examples of rails with trails. So because in our community, we have long aspired to have the CSX space contribute to transit. And so I think, using that other conjunction and other examples of with would be a good idea. Next, I wanted to ask you if there are any tax revenue estimates that sort of would be included in a before and after. This committee is very well versed in the value of small and dense development and redevelopment. one of our own committee members presented that to us a while back. And so it would be very interesting to really put some economic dollars and cents to what the value of this is. I know in Palmacia, there is no CRA. And so it's just really important that we could know what the dollars and cents might mean. And then my question to you is, on Main Street, you shared with us that 47% of the recommendations are being advanced already, which is fantastic. But on Bay to Bay, are any of the recommendations already being advanced, or what can we do to make sure that that is also moving forward? I mean, studies are great, but help us understand what action is resulting. Thank you.
Yes, I appreciate the comments. I agree with you. There are far too many plans that are, well-intentioned and they sit on the shelf and nothing gets done. In terms of what percentage has been accomplished in Palmacia, I have to get back to you on that. Initially, the proposal was to have some sort of pilot studies done for on-street parking, for traffic calming, for moving some of the commercial elements further back from the sidewalk. So there are a number of proposals. We have, it's not so much a matter of funding, which is always the case, but it's more of getting everybody in the community on board behind to support one or two or three recommendations. So at this point, the best way for us to move forward with that is to work on half a dozen, if maybe slightly less, pilot programs, and see how well the community buys into those before we can give you some specific numbers.
Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. Are there comments or questions from committee members online? I don't
Mr. Chairman?
see any hands. Rick Richmond, you're recognized.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Great. This is fantastic. I just want to echo it struck to me the rails to trails conversion down in Palmacia, when I think some of the community, or I'll just say Tampa, has really been trying to leverage that for future fixed rail. So just want to echo that as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Any other comments from the committee? Yes, Hoyt Pringle, you're recognized.
Yes, Mr. Richmond must have read my mind, but great presentation, but also want to echo his concern that he brought up, to the extent that any hard rail would be removed for a trail project in South Tampa. I would certainly be opposed to that, as the CSX rail lines are right now our best opportunity to get much needed rail transit here to make us a competitive metropolitan region. So thank you.
But there is room for both, saying that out loud.
Absolutely, there is room for both. Again, that was just one potential recommendation. There are a number of potential solutions on the table. And we will be having additional community outreach as some of these projects move forward.
Thank you for the clarification. Glad that there's room for both. Room for both is great. Just want to reiterate that hopefully none of those options would involve removal of the rail. So.
Thank you, White. I think that's a recommendation that probably has consensus on this committee. Mr. Hall, I think this study has a great potential for our community. We applaud you undertaking it. I think you can tell this committee is more than willing to be very engaged and assist you. And I would welcome you to come back with any interim report at a time you think is appropriate.
Thank you, and I certainly will. Please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions, comments, or concerns about anything related to this at any time. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That said, I'd like to move to the next of our status reports. I think Davida Franklin is going to give us a quick report on TPO social media outreach.
Yes,
Rita?
hi. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Davida, you're on the agenda. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for your interest in the social media engagement policy of the process of the TPO. So I'm just going to go over a couple of things and I'm going to share my screen. And just briefly, we have 4 content areas that we cover. So we will share things like newsletter articles, which will direct folks to read our newsletter for the TPO and Planned Hillsborough as a whole. And then also we will highlight current studies. We share partner content that they may have on social media, as well as things that they will that they share with us from content they may have in their meetings. And then we also share content from special meetings, such as the Transportation Improvement Program, as well as the update to the non-discrimination plan. So the platforms that we share this content on are Facebook and Twitter and YouTube. And we do encourage feedback from folks who are engaging us on those platforms, and we encourage them to either comment on those platforms or to send an email our way, to go to the pages that we have for our different studies and input their comments there. We also encourage them to place a comment to us by phone, and we've received comments from the public in all those types of ways. So I'm just going to go ahead and show the process of how we do this. Okay, so do you see a spreadsheet on your screens that I see on my screen?
Yes.
Yes, we do.
Okay. Yes, thank you. All right, so this is our social media calendar, and it's you know, very simple. We have folks. There's 3 of us on the public engagement team. We are assigned to post different things. I'm primarily assigned to the TPO's Facebook page, and you'll see here that it has my name and something I scheduled back in May, which was, in case you missed it, a Bike to Work Day post. And if I go onto Facebook here, you'll see here's the post right here. And we actually received some comments on this post. We received a comment from a resident who had some concerns about how the TPO recommends funding. And then we did go ahead and respond to his post. We also had a post that same day on the Transportation Improvement Program. We post about 3 times a week, at least that's what we schedule. And then that gives us ample room for us to post any partner content that comes our way, or any last minute updates that we need to give on a study. So again, this is Facebook. We also have YouTube and Twitter, but some of the improvements that are coming your way, or to our community's way, is we are going to expand our content onto TikTok as well as Instagram. And we've also improved our engagement process by sending out notifications of items of interest, such as the Transportation Improvement Program, where we'll send out emails to neighborhood associations or homeowner associations, as well as putting posts on the Transit Now Tampa Bay Facebook page. And folks have been receptive to that and have been making comments, and we're encouraging folks on social media to specifically comment on our page or tag us, because other than that, we can't really field their comments as public record to the TPO board. And so that's it. That's our social media process for the TPO. And again, I thank you for your interest in that. And if you have any input or recommendations, I'm more than willing to accept them and hear what you have to say. Thank you.
Davida, good summary. Are there questions from the committee? This is a report that the committee asked to be informed about, so we have a better sense of what the TPO is doing to reach out to the community. See no hands in the room. Are there any questions from committee members online?
I'm not seeing anything in the chat.
All right, and I don't see everyone online. Well, Davida, thank you for that information. Good report. and we look forward to hearing from you again soon.
Thank you.
All right. I'm looking at the hour and I'm recognizing that we had a lot of public comment about an issue that is on our agenda. With the committee's indulgence, I would like to skip to item 8B, which is the I-275 barrier wall discussion. Is there any objection to moving that item up on the agenda? Anyone in the room object? Seeing none. Anyone online object? I'm seeing none. So we will move now to item 8B, the I-275 barrier wall unfinished business and discussion. This was a request of Vice Chair Rick Fernandez, so I will give him the floor and let him take it over.
Thank you, Chair. Appreciate it. This is a good news, bad news situation. We had a public comment that ate up about 45 minutes of our time at the beginning of the meeting, which is going to be making it difficult for us to fully vet the issue now at the end. That's how things go. For those of you that are new to the committee, what you heard this morning by way of public comment in terms of volume is very unusual for us. We maybe get one or two on a good day. I don't even know how many we had today, but certainly we surpassed that by multiples, which hopefully suggests the passion the community has on this issue. I'm going to ask Johnny Wong, please call up the map, the aerial of the DTI interchange that we discussed earlier. And while he's doing that, I'm going to hand out some motions that I prepared, which I hope to advance when we get done talking. Maybe make it a little easier for you all to follow. And by the way, for those of you who are virtual, I asked Dr. Wong to circulate these motions to you by email about 45 minutes or so ago. And if you haven't had a chance to look at your email, and if it's multiple along. Excuse me while I'm walking around the room handing these papers out. I'll be right next to the station. Real short on paper. No. You know, these are millions that haven't seen the light of day yet. Yes. Okay, so Dr. Wong has put up on our screen the downtown interchange aerial photograph. This is actually the image that appears, I believe, as PowerPoint slide 4 on the board agenda for May 2021, which is when the board was considering tip amendment number 21 that had to do with funding for right-of-way acquisition over in VME-BOR, $2.5 million that they were requesting. This is the latest and most detailed map that I have access to that addresses what that site looks like. So I think it's important to orient to it. The relevant materials for this discussion are the handouts, the resolution document that I handed out to everyone, or that you may have received by email transmission. Also the Lamar photos that you've seen, and they were part of the attachments as well. It's hard to breathe with this thing. And just now the motions that I gave you. Let me orient you on the map. And Johnny, I'm not sure how this works for you and the virtual folks. It's easy enough in the room. I've got one of these laser pointers to help you see where we are. And for those of you who are more tactile, I have large duplications of this map scattered about the room. So if you want to go take a look at them that way, you might find that more informative for you. Okay, I don't think there are any helicopters around, so we'll use this laser. Johnny, can you expand that a little bit so I have more of the north-south of 275?
Is that good, or do we need to keep going?
Yeah, just stop there. You may have to just move it along with me while I'm talking. The arc of the interstate that is subject to this wall movement that we've been talking about basically begins right here, where I'm pointing on the map. And to orient you, this cross street here is Floor, Nebraska. This is the frontage road, Elmore. The wall movement, I have been told, will begin about halfway between Floor, Nebraska and Columbus Drive. Johnny, can you move the map further up so I've got more of a southern track? This is south, by the way. This placard up here is the northern edge of the boundary that I'm referring to. Johnny, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. You want me to move it down to see more of the southern portion, or up?
Yeah, keep moving south, down toward the actual interchange. There you go. Okay, this is where I left off before. This is about the midway point between Floor, Nebraska and Columbus. We've been told that the wall expansion is supposed to take place right about at that midway point and then continue along the entire arc of the interstate. This is the eastern border of Tampa Heights. Continue on past Columbus, Palm, and down here to 7th Avenue, behind Mobley Park Apartments, for those of you who are familiar with that area, all the way to Scott Street. Johnny doesn't have me in frame right now, but that is essentially the art of the thing that we're talking about. And broadly speaking, I'm just referring to Floor, Nebraska and Scott Street, which is probably about 1.5 miles of this, and it's all eastern border of Tampa Heights. Now, full disclosure, that's Columbus. I live on Elmore, two doors down from Floor, Nebraska. So this, to say very simply, affects me very close to home, but I'm been told that the wall in front of my house is not moving, so I dodged the bullet. The wall movement actually begins about 200 yards. So many of the people you heard this morning in public comment either live on Elmore or live along that corridor to the south and are going to be directly affected by the wall movement, whatever that wall movement turns out to be. Part of the problem we have here, ladies and gentlemen, is that the Tampa Heights community did not know about this wall movement until November 17th of this year, which is hard to fathom considering the fact that we've been talking about the downtown interchange in one way or another since 2015 when TBX first rolled out. This downtown interchange issue with the operational safety improvements rolled out in 2019. And I've been on these issues white on rice since 2015. I personally have never heard anything about that wall movement being necessary for the DTI operational and safety. And as I canvassed the neighborhood, thinking that perhaps I was nuts, I somehow had just forgotten or the detail had eluded me, I can't find anybody in Tampa Heights that's been actively involved in these discussions for the last 5-6 years that knew anything about this. So, yeah, we were shocked. And not only that, I found out by accident. This was not a rollout of information. I was having coffee with two FDOT representatives at King State on Floor, Nebraska at 275 talking about architectural aspects to the wall, landscaping issues, historical treatments that are relevant to the community as a historic district. I frankly had given up on the downtown interchange as a point of debate anymore. It was what it was. We won some, we lose some. And then, just offhandedly, one of those representatives happened to mention to me that after the wall is moved, there will be room for landscaping opportunities. I had coffee in my mouth and I almost choked when she said that. From that moment on, I began my canvassing. I began asking questions. Have we just lost the bubble here? Did this happen and it slipped through? I can find no public-facing information that tells us that that wall was going to be moved. So we have a project that's already been approved, but we've had no due diligence on this aspect of the project. None of the things that you would expect the community to know about before they begin a major construction project, literally within feet of people's front doors. None of those things have been detailed for us. This is supposed to be a design build project, so we don't know what's coming or when. Construction on this is not to begin until 2023, as I understand it. So we do have a long window during which we may be able to roll back the hands of time just a little bit and begin doing the type of vetting that we need to do. One, so that we know what we're doing. Two, to understand the benefit and burden analysis. And three, decide if this is really the direction we want to go in. Now, I know the community wasn't aware of this. I suspect that there are members of the TPO staff and the TPO board that weren't aware of this either. But frankly, whether they knew or not, doesn't really matter. The fact that the community has been cut out of it and we are the ones that are going to bear the burden of it, that's the issue that matters to us. And that's what I hope you began to understand when you were hearing the comments. And I'm emotional about this, so I'm sorry. I was born in this neighborhood, and it means a lot to me. And this angers the hell out of me. Now, the other issue that you heard about was the Lamar house. Now, Lamar is right on the border, if I can find it. Johnny, you need to move down a little bit further south, please. No, the other south. The other direction. Yeah. Okay. Keep going. All right, stop.
Sorry, there's a little bit of a delay between what I'm doing and what you're seeing.
All right.
Is that good?
I'm not sure. It's hard to read these. That Palm Avenue there? I think that's Palm. Here's Columbus. Now further south. All right. Stop. You see Palm? Yeah, okay. There's Palm, folks, right there. All right. The Lamar Avenue house is basically behind this little placard that you see here. We're on the west side of the interstate, probably about 150 feet from the wall. Lamar runs north and south. If anybody's been there before, our community center is right there. That's the Tampa Heights Junior Civic Association Community Center. About a block away from that is where the Lamar house is located. Now, I want to clarify one thing. This house is not proposed for demolition by the Department of Transportation because it needs it to move the wall. It's not about that. They've owned this building since 2016, 2015, actually, and they've simply not maintained it. They've boarded it up. It's gone through what I call a process of demolition by neglect over that period of time. Yeah. And now it's in pretty bad shape if you've looked at the pictures, no question. But we have an interest in reclaiming the property as a community and rehabbing it. We've done that before. Our community center right there on Lamar and Palm is evidence of the fact we're capable of doing it. There was community sweat equity and volunteers that put that building back in business, and it's now the heart and soul of the community in many respects. We want to do that again. We want to preserve the building for its singular purpose, but understand that it is a contributing structure to our neighborhood as a historic district. It's one of the specific properties identified when we applied for National Historic Designation. So take the building and you're pulling out a thread of our historic tapestry. That's a problem for us too. And continuing the theme, how we learn about these things by accident. The only reason we know DOT was planning to demolish that building is because Lena Young-Green, who was here speaking to you a little while ago, who actually manages, is the leader of the pack, if you will, for the community center and for the youth group. She was at work one day, looked out the window and happened to see some some hard hats walking around the building. She went over to inquire, found out that they were tearing out asbestos anticipatory to a demolition. Now that piece of news happened to hit about a week before I learned about the wall expansion. Put the two together, and Tampa Heights has its hair on fire. It all happened at once, totally disrespectful of the community's interest and without any notice whatsoever. So before I have a heart attack, and again, I apologize, I'm trying to get a lot in a short time, and I am emotional about it. I presented you with what purported to be a resolution sent to you on Monday. And I know there's a lot to chew there. You are pretty recent to this family. You're parachuting in right in the middle of a mess. And some of these issues, as far as TBX and Tampa Bay Next and all that other next stuff that we've been dealing with, and it's, for me, second nature. For you, you're probably lost in the woods, and I get it, right? I can simplify it for you, though. This is about a neighborhood that's being abused and needs protection. I intend to go to the board next week, regardless of what happens here, and bring our roadshow with us and begin the push there to try to do what needs to be done to protect the neighborhood. I'll do that regardless of what happens here. But the fact of the matter is, I respect this committee. This committee, although we have no actual authority, we do have influence. And this board, believe it or not, listens to us. We actually resolve things here, and they go there, and they accept them. So having the imprimatur of this committee in my bag when I go to the board next week with my friends and neighbors would be very important to us. So I am asking you to support the neighborhood, to give us an opportunity to do what we need to do to stand up on our own 2 feet, protect our neighborhood and rebuild it, which we've been doing now literally for decades under the weight of this infrastructure. Now, one last thing, then I'll take any questions you may have, or I will make my motion. Oh, let me finish. The resolution. Because I think it's a lot to chew on, I presented it as an informational piece to try to get people up to speed. And if there's anybody here that feels comfortable enough with that resolution at this point that they would like to move it forward, I'd be happy to take and hear that motion, and I would gladly second. But I'm a realist, and I suspect that there are many of you who hadn't even read that thing before you walked in here. So, and I get it. So what I did was I prepared 2 motions, one having to do with the Lamar property, one having to do with the wall movement. And basically here, I'm sorry, this was to share with Bill. We'll have to share that because I'm short. Okay. 2 motions. I left exemplars, 1 exemplar there to be shared. John and Nick, between you, and I think everyone else in the room got their own personal 2 copies, and people online, hopefully you got your emails. What I've done is I've gone through the resolution and I've extracted the guts of it and put it into motions that may be a little bit more easy to digest. I don't doubt there'll be people that have concerns about it, and we can talk about it. But this is the resolution reduced down to bite size, and actually asks the board to do certain things, most of which are recognition and policy level things to communicate a message to the Department of Transportation. So, oh, one last thing. People are going to ask, how in the world could Tampa Heights not know about this? DOT is going to say we should have known because they've been telling us all along. What I'm going to ask, to the extent you have the opportunity to do it here or online, that map, again, I said it's the most recent, most detailed map that I had available to me. And it was the map that was used in May by the DOT board. It was part of their agenda. Whether they looked at it or not, I don't know, but it was part of their agenda. It was part of the package, I believe, that was presented to the TPO board when they did the tip review in June. You're not going to find a single thing on that map, nothing, that talks about the wall being moved. You will see an annotation right at the area near where my home is that points to the wall and talks about murals and artwork being organized with the city of Tampa on the quote unquote existing wall. Not a new wall that's been put up after the old one's demolished, but on the existing wall. Also, there is a survey that floated around. It's Time Tampa Bay or something like that, I forget. Many of you probably took it. I know they brought it here to our group. And it was an effort to reach out to the community and get survey results on what, among other things, what or which of the 4 downtown interchange options the community wanted. They put 4 scenarios out. One was no build. One was a quick fix, which is in fact now the downtown operational and safety improvements approach that we have. The other 2 were more destructive. I'm not going to bother taking time with those. The no build tanked. The 2 more destructive ones tanked. The one that prevailed was the quick fix. That's why we're still talking about it. But it was interesting to me when I went back, I asked the staff to pull these up because they're not easy to find now, 2 years hence. And I was interested to see how they described these options from the least destructive to the most destructive. Option 1, which was the no build, specific to the question of impact on homes and businesses, 0. That makes sense. We're not touching the damn thing. So it's not going to affect your house. Okay, feel good about that. I voted for no build. The second option, the safety and operational improvements, what we're here talking about now and what has been approved by the board, impacts on homes and businesses, 0. So this survey, and it's not the only iteration of it, it appears several other times. It was circulated to neighborhood associations. It was presented here. As I recall, the survey vendor was particularly impressed by the fact that it got so many results. Lisa Silva has been here talking about it more than once. It was kind of used as a sword against us, frankly. But the fact that this process, this particular plan, and the no build plan are both presented to the community as having no impact on homes at all, well, I'm going to be cordial, since David Gwynn seems to get upset when I get upset. There's a miscommunication. People that voted for that option thought they were voting for something that wasn't going to affect their homes. And let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, this is going to affect people's homes. And in a terrible way, there are folks down my street who live literally 45, 50 feet from the wall now. There's a street and a greenway and then the wall. That is going to be deconstructed and rebuilt at least 12 feet closer to Elmore, 12 feet closer to their front doors. And the irony of it is, had I not gone and had coffee with no FDOT representatives on November 17th, it's possible we would not have known that until they walked out on their front porches in their bathrobes and bunny slippers one morning, and the earth movers would be there. That could easily have happened the way this thing was tracked, because it was already a done deal. I think the only people that know anything about that wall being moved now are the contractors that are bidding on the project. I have seen some of that project-oriented, industry-oriented material, and I think what I'm seeing involves movement of the wall to the west. But that's not public facing, and it's certainly not anything anybody showed us, and it's of recent vintage, after the project was approved. So, all right, I'm gonna take a breath. You've got the 2 motions in front of you. Before I make motions, I'll accept questions.
Let me, thank you, Rick. Let me ask Rich Clarendon, who wanted to present this, if he has any comment before the committee asks questions of Rick. Rich, did you want to weigh in at all?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Thank you. And I appreciate all the discussion and public comment that preceded it at the beginning of the meeting. A couple of things I just wanted to point out to the committee. Last month, the TPO board heard some of these concerns under their public comment, and the long and the short of it was that it stimulated Commissioner Gwen Myers to ask DOT to hold a public a community meeting with the folks in Tampa Heights, and that actually has been scheduled as an open house for tonight at 6 p.m. There's information in your agenda package. It's going to be both virtual and in person at the C. Blythe Andrews Public Library. So again, that's 6 p.m. this evening, and DOT is going to be addressing some of these issues directly with the community folks. I also wanted just to mention a couple of points for the committee's information. One is that under the state statutes, the TPO can't make a unilateral decision to remove funding from the downtown interchange project at this point because it's gone past the design phase and is in fact in a construction phase at this point. The second is, and I wasn't here or wasn't have not been involved in every meeting that has taken place on this issue, especially at the community level, but I do know that the movement of the noise walls was shown on display boards back in August of 2019 at a meeting that we set up for the CAC. It was a special briefing for CAC members, and very few CAC members actually attended, but there was a display board including an arrow pointing at the noise wall in the roll plot, calling out that it would be moved. So the displays were also shown by DOT at the FDOT public meetings about the supplemental environmental impact statement as it was wrapped up during the subsequent 9 months. So, I think there's, some assertion that the information was made public. It probably could have been highlighted better, but I don't think it was, not disclosed. So I just wanted to point that out. And obviously, this, as Rick has mentioned, is going to come up at next week's TPO board meeting. So this is timely. But we're not here necessarily to speak for FDOT, but simply to point out what's been done in the past and the status of the project. If there's questions that I can answer, I'll be happy to try to do so.
All right. Thank you, Rich. Alexis, did you have a comment or a question? And I'll get to Josh. Thank you.
Yeah, I was wondering if item 8E on the TPO agenda is related to this. It's the follow-up to the downtown interchange to amendment motions. It refers to a wall gap at Robles Park, which I don't think is the same thing.
I think that's a different issue. I haven't seen the TPO's agenda for next week. It wasn't posted, I don't think, yesterday.
It's on there now.
It's there now?
I don't think it's that it was on the agenda, but are you saying it's going to come up in public comment?
No, next week?
Yeah.
Yeah, Commissioner Cohen, the chair of the TPO, at least told us that FDOT was going to be invited back this month to address the issues that were raised last month about the wall. Now, it wasn't just about the movement of wall, it was also about a sound wall along Robles Park, which was another point of contention. We want one, they don't want to give us one. That's not what I'm here to talk about today, but it was a whole cornucopia of things. And rather than take a lot of time on the TPO board agenda last month, he wanted to divert the conversation and push it all into this month. So we're teeing up for a meeting that FDOT is actually going to be called to answer some of our questions, but not all of our questions are even in the record yet. And when I can, I'd like to respond to a couple of things Rich said. I won't turn this into a debate, but there are a couple of things I want to respond to.
Let's give it to a chance. Josh, Frank?
Yeah, a question for Rich. You mentioned because this has gone from the design phase to the construction phase, that the TPO board no longer has statutory ability to remove funding for a project. What, if any, outcomes or statutory abilities do they have available to them to either pause a project or add a moratorium on it, as this resolution mentions? What options are available to them to exercise to sort of deal with any other standard issues that may arise during the construction phase or otherwise?
Not sure I caught all of that, but I think that what I heard was, what options does the TPO board have at this point?
Right.
Yes.
To modify the project?
Yes.
Yeah, so I think at this point, the options really are to try to work with the department to come up with acceptable design solutions. But as I mentioned, I don't think the TPO has the ability to stop the project in its tracks and withdraw funding from it, because it's really past that point of no return.
Right, but is there any other way, whether it's an injunction or a moratorium or anything to add time or,
refine,
aside from relying on the good faith of DOT to meet their, design requests, which we've seen hasn't always been stellar. Aside from that, is there no option now that it's in construction?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the last part of that. Is there no option to what?
Now that it's in construction phase.
I'm sorry, I still didn't hear you.
Rich, I think
No, that was pretty bad.
Now that it's in construction phase.
Right. Well, yeah, I think the only options really the TPO board has is if, there's a need for additional funding that would have to be included in the TIP or amended into the TIP. That would be the only action that the board could take to withdraw or withhold funding from the project. I really do think that it's incumbent on the department to work with the community to come up with an acceptable design. And I'm pretty sure that's the position most of the TPO board members would have at this stage. I don't want to put words in their mouths, and we'll certainly hear about this next week, but that's my hunch.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think for me, the finest point is you touched on a little bit, Rich, and I sense there's some back and forth on what it was. What exact notification was done? When was it done? How was it done? I think to me, that's the main crux of the discussion.
Thank you. Mr. Glover, do you have a comment or a question?
I do. I have a couple. The first one, Rich can answer. You can answer too, Rick. I know you're well versed. In terms of contributing structures, are there other examples of otherwise perfectly fine buildings that were contributing structures that have been demolished by FDOT? I'm trying to see if there's any kind of precedent for this.
Yeah, I'm sure there are. I wish I could come to you with a list of them. and without taking too much time, DOT did move many historic contributing structures from the path of the interstate way back when, and relocated them to preserve them. The property that we heard from Nicole Perry was a property that was situate on FDOT property, on land. They owned it. They had it boarded up. It was due in the process of demolition by neglect. They wanted to demolish it, and we got into an engagement with them about preserving it, similar to what we're doing here. And Nicole and her family came along and purchased it, moved it to the next lot, and now they have rehabbed it. But for them, that property would probably have been demolished already, or would have just fallen down under its own weight as the direction it's going. And that was a contributing structure. The building that we have at Tom and Lamar, the community center, that is a contributing structure, which ironically enough is owned by the DOT, and it was demolishing itself before our eyes. They turned it over to us to rehab it. They still own it. It's being used under lease from the city. But that one was originally in the path of the original TBX and was scheduled to be paved over. It still stands by grace of God, and we're making perfect use of it. So I wish I could answer all the questions, but Josh may even know better than I.
Yes. We didn't go too far, but I want to make sure I understand the logic. Is that PennDOT purchased that property in 2015 with the goal of having it demolished, and then over time allowed that property to become decrepit to bolster that point. Is that what we're saying?
Not quite.
Okay.
When FDOT purchased the Lamar property in 2015, we were still under the threat of the original TBX project. The original TBX project would have taken out that property and a whole bunch of other property around it. It was like dropping one of those big mega bombs on a bunker bomb buster. The interchange would have been doubled in size. That property, maybe not the building if it had been moved, but that property was going to go. So they bought it for right-of-way acquisition. It wasn't eminent domain. It was a free purchase. Not a free purchase, but it was a willing purchase, buyer seller. They bought it, they boarded it up, they held it. Then TBX collapsed under its own weight at the end of 2016 and into 17. All of a sudden, TBX was gone. The size of the interstate expansion at the exchange was reduced. And now the property sits there. They don't need it. It's not being used for anything. It's not needed for any future expansion because the interstate is not going to go that far. And it's not needed for this wall expansion that we're talking about now because the wall is not, thank God, the wall is not going to go as far as to reach that building. So it's just sitting there derelict. And frankly, my read is they want to demolish it because it's become a pain in the butt. They got to maintain it. They're tired of maintaining it. They get complaints from us because people break in, set fires to keep warm, all kinds of things that happen. There's dumping that takes place. So as an owner, with the responsibility to the community to maintain it, it's become a hassle. I think they just want to relieve themselves. And we'd like to relieve them by taking it over.
And then my last question, Mr. Chair, is just want to make sure the movement of the wall, that 12 feet, 16 feet, sorry, that's not in response to the community asking for additional sound walls. That's what I mean.
No.
I got to answer. Just want to make sure.
Yeah.
No one has asked for that along the way.
No, that wall movement would allegedly be necessary in order to accommodate the additional infrastructure that needs to be built to accommodate additional lane capacity in the downtown interchange operational and safety improvements project. There's a flyover ramp that goes to Orlando from southbound I-4, and there's another ramp that goes from westbound I-4 into downtown. Both of those lane movements have an arc that run through Tampa Heights. Both of those lane movements, we now understand, are going to require the wall to be moved out westward in order to accommodate the additional capacity. That's the detail that got missed in all of this discussion. And, you know, I would have to shut up and sit down if there had been one meeting where David Gwynn or one member of his team were to say, we're going to add additional lane onto the flyover ramp. That's the one that particularly affects Elmore, where I live. We're going to add an additional lane there, but we can do it within the existing right-of-way. That was always the the terminology they use. They never said, and I swear to God to you, Nick, if they had said it, I think I would have noticed. It's right down the damn street. They never said, we're going to add an additional lane, but in order to do that, we have to move the wall forward by 12 feet. Those additional 10 words would have put me and my neighbors on notice that we had a fight on our hands. And that could have been said in 2019. And I swear to you, it never was. If somebody can pull a tape somewhere that says it was, I'll eat my hat. Having some map somewhere that they say shows it, without having somebody there explaining it, is crap. Excuse my French. This is industry lingo. You aren't going to find a single map to scale that actually explains what's being shown. You look at the map that we display, and you tell me if you live there that you would think that that was going to take out part of your property or in front of your property. Coupled with the fact that you've been told in the survey that no homes are going to be affected. So,
are there other questions from the committee, Nick? Anyone online have a question of either Rich Clarendon or Rick Fernandez? Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question for Rich. The TPO has outside counsel, do they not? Or do they, I don't have an in-house attorney, right? It's outside counsel.
There's an MPO attorney, Cameron Clark. He's actually with the county attorney's office, but he's assigned to the TPO.
Okay, so in theory, then this committee could make a request of Mr. Clark to provide some information regarding legal remedies available to the TPO.
In theory, sure.
Okay, all right. Thank you. I may make a motion related to that after we address what's currently on the table. Thank you.
I think, Hoyt, I would say that this committee's ability is fairly limited in making requests or recommendations to the TPO itself. But we can certainly make that kind of a recommendation. TPO request its attorney to provide that information. Fine point. So let me try to clarify where we are. We have, in my view, there are two issues that have been brought before us today. The first is the question of the Lamar Street property. The second is the question of whether or not there can be some delay and further study in the movement of the sound walls. I think that certainly the question of the sound walls is going to be a highlight of the meeting tonight with the community of the DOT. With regard to the Lamar Street property, I have been out there, I've looked at it, I'm very sympathetic to the problem, but I will say that the DOT, in last month's TPO meeting, was very clear that anyone who wanted to take this property off their hands would be welcome. They could buy it, they could move it, they could renovate it. He did not necessarily say he would sell the property, but that was part of the invitation I got from his remarks. So Mr. Fernandez is right. DOT no longer wants this property, no longer wants to be responsible for it. So with those two issues on the table, I would like to see if Mr. Fernandez wants to make a motion or if someone else on the committee wants to make a motion, because I'm mindful of the hour.
Sure.
And where we are.
I do have just two real quick points of clarification based on what you just said, and Rich, and then I'm going to hopefully shut up.
Okay.
I'll respond to anything else. First of all, the Blythe Andrews informational piece, that was nothing that was coordinated through Tampa Heights. I can tell you that right now. First of all, Blythe Andrews is not located in Tampa Heights. I got notification of that meeting maybe for the first time when I saw it in the agenda package that Rich attached. There may have been an email that circulated. I don't know if there was. I didn't see it. And if any of you have ever been to one of those informational type meetings, they have them all over the place. They've had them in Seminole Heights several times. Basically, what that involves, you walk in, you look at a bunch of charts, and you ask questions, and they tell you what they're going to do. It's not a discussion. It's virtual or in place, but you're going there and looking at a bunch of charts. It's not a discussion with the community about what it is they want. It's a discussion with the DOT telling you what they're going to do. I'm going to go tonight because, frankly, I want to videotape what's going on, because those things tend to be ludicrous. But that is not, at least I hope it's not, what Gwen Myers was talking about. She was talking about bringing them back to us for community engagement. I'm looking at something similar to the charrettes that were done back in 2015 and 2016, where we were looking at TBX for the first time, addressing the details from the ground up as best we could. That's number one. Number two, there's this rabbit hole that we're going down about. We can't remove funding from the downtown interchange project. Well, hello, we're not asking to remove funding from the downtown interchange project. We're asking to look at one aspect of the project, relatively small, all things considered, given everything else they're doing around here. One aspect of the project and doing a due diligence level vetting of that project that was never done, ever. I can assure you there's nobody on the board right now, and probably nobody on staff, that can tell you the detail of what's happening with that wall. What I do know, the only thing I know, is that the wall is going to be moved. We don't know how far out. The only thing we've been told is that after the movement is done, we will have a minimum of 16 feet of buffer remaining. Now, in a place like Elmore, in my street, I can kind of figure what that's about, because I don't have that much greenway at that street. But in an area where you may have 150 feet worth of greenway, they could move that wall all the way out and leave you with 16 feet. And we don't know that. We should, but we don't. Now, people living around there have no clue. Most of the projects still even don't know this is happening. I can only canvas so much. So, I don't know, hopefully that answers your question.
Okay, thank you.
Come to Glen Andrews. I'm sure we'll have a party.
I'm hopeful that there will be better detail provided at the public meeting tonight. So what is the will of the committee? We've heard Mr. Fernandez's position. We've heard some comments from Mr. Swearingen. I think kind of like the DOT that we can do nothing, we can do this, or we can do that. So if someone cares to make a motion, I will entertain it. We're under new business. This is an issue that's important to a significant community in our neighborhood, our county. And at the very least, I would hope that following tonight's meeting, someone would come back to us with a report on much greater detail about the plans for the wall. And secondly, what plans, if any, could be developed for the Lamar Street building project.
All right, well, and follow up to that, I do not intend to move the resolution forward, because as I said earlier, I think it's a little too much to chew for most people. But if anyone here has reviewed it and digested it, feels comfortable with it, and wants to move it forward, I will second that motion. Otherwise, I have two motions to make, one on Lamar and one on the wall movement. Sir?
I will move the resolution forward. I've read it, and just to summarize, I've been involved with TBX, this project since 2015. I was at the threats working for FDOT on this project, and can tell you part and parcel, Rick is 100% accurate description of everything that has taken place. And even in my own comments going before the TPO board for the TIP hearing, have stressed time and time again, you give that an inch, it takes place. This is an inherent problem with the design build way of doing these types of projects, where we don't get to see it until it's already under construction. And it's also just inherently an effort in bad faith. But something we thought we had moved past with FDOT. Yeah. But it's very apparent we haven't. Whether they use the word right of way, footprint, whatever they want to say, this is an unacceptable deviation from their own marketing efforts and their own, visualizations. I can't rely on the fact that there may have been one board with one call out or one leader pointing to this at some point in the past 6 years, and say that that was satisfactory enough for FDOT to, move forward with something like this. Even if we can't, as a TPO board, even if they can't enact a moratorium or an injunction or anything of any substance, this is a shot, a message that says it's FDOT's responsibility to come before the board with an acceptable solution for approval instead of the other way around, where we have to continuously say, this is unacceptable after the fact and rely on their efforts to make things right, which they often do not do. It's only by happenstance this one comes before this board. It's only been, 6, 7 years, 8, 10 years since we've seen other contributing structures in other neighborhoods such as Ybor either demolished or removed by neglect. So I recognize, Mr. Chairman, that these are two separate motions and topics, but they are interrelated. This is a standard of practice that has become untenable and unacceptable for a state department that relies on our tax dollars to do projects that benefit not only us, but the people who use the infrastructure, live right next door. And the fact is that this is just something that I cannot stand for. So I will put this resolution forward because even if it's not something that the board can act on completely, it's something that they will see, and it's something that FDOT will see and take seriously, and hopefully leverage into something that resolves this in a way that's equitable for all those involved. I will make a motion to put this resolution forward.
A motion to approve the resolution that was presented by Mr. Fernandez as part of this package. I will tell you that I am initially been inclined not to accept that motion because it addresses directly the DOT, and our authority rests in making recommendations to the TPO board. Having read the motion more thoroughly, I'm willing to accept the motion, and if there's a second, we'll move it forward.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to second the motion.
Christina Costa moves a second. Is there further discussion on the motion?
Chair.
Yes.
Just a clarification, please. There were two motions provided. Which one are we moving forward? Thank you.
Neither of the two motions provided by Mr. Fernandez are under consideration. What we're considering is a document entitled Resolution of the Citizens Advisory Committee. Is that correct? Is that correct?
Yes,
yes, that's correct.
This is the, I don't know who asked that question, but this is the resolution that was circulated by Johnny Wong on Monday at my request. It's here, I've handed it out in paper here to people that are in the room, but that's the one we're talking about.
Thank you.
Are there other questions? Anyone online? I don't see everyone online, so you'll have to speak up or let Johnny know you want to make a comment. Just a moment.
Chair, I don't see any questions online. Ed Majerski is requesting to know if there's still an in-person quorum in the room before we vote.
Quorum, do we have quorum still?
I'm doing a head count, and we do still have a quorum, so we are able to take action on this motion. If there are no questions, no further discussion from the committee members, I'd like to take a roll call vote, please. Gail, will you call the roll?
Bill Roberts,
No.
Rick Fernandez,
Yes.
David Bailey, Carolyn Brown, I see that she's still online, but she's not unmuted. Hoyt Prindle,
Yes.
Christina Bosworth,
Yes.
Miaza Morrison,
Yes.
Stephen Hollenkamp. I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
I'm pretty sure that was no. It usually is.
Okay. Alexis Boback,
Yes.
Christina Costa,
Yes.
Nicholas Glover,
No.
Don Skelton,
No.
Jeff Lucas.
lost you.
I don't see him online anymore. Jonathan Knudsen,
No.
Sharon Gamond. Don't believe she's on either. No. Terrence Trott,
Yes.
Rick Richmond,
No.
Joshua Frank.
Yes.
The motion passes 8-6.
All right.
Thank you, everyone.
I'm going to bring that information to the TPO board at their meeting next week. Does that conclude your item on the agenda?
Yeah, unless you want to call EMS to deal with my heart issue.
We'll be on standby for that. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to look at the hour and we talk it is after 12:30. I'm going to ask if there's any objection to deferring the remaining items on our agenda for our meeting in February. Is there anyone objecting to that in the room? Is there anyone objecting online to deferring till February? I don't see any, and I don't hear any. So I want to thank you all for taking the time and the energy and making the effort to come to this meeting. It seems to be getting a little easier to come to these meetings, but it's wonderful to have a forum. Great to have you all here, and I look forward to seeing you all again in February. I will now accept the motion to adjourn. Move to adjourn. So moved. Thank you very much.
Thank you all for sticking around.
Thank you all. Thank you, Chair.
Regardless of where you vote, thanks for giving us a forum.
Thank you, everybody.